हम्म A very good morning to all of you. The people online also. Kuch, I'll take some seconds, give you some seconds to settle down. If you're able to see the screen also, if you're able to hear me, you can mention how is the voice. We will start with the lecture number 3. So in case I think some of you would have already covered lecture number 1 and 2. Lecture number 1 and 2 से कोई doubts हैं before we start? एजी एज इफेक्ट बताना है आपने पिछले बार भी आपने पूछा था एज स्पीशीज अच्छा वाह ठीक है ठीक है ठीक है एज इफेक्ट और कोई डाउट क्वेश्चंस करें अभी लेक्चर 1-2 के नहीं मेरे नहीं मैंने कहा करे कि नहीं अच्छा अच्छा रिवाइज किया ठीक है ओके गुड मॉर्निंग आशुतोष द वॉइस इज नॉट एन इशू ठीक है हैप्पी टू नो दैट okay. So apart from this edge effect, any other issue or any doubt or any clarification you want? Otherwise, we'll proceed. अच्छा homework में doubt है चलो अच्छा हुआ in the very starting you're telling me there's a doubt in the homework. हाँ? अच्छा ठीक है. So what is the doubt that you have? Oh, no, of course this doubt question I've given you because when I talk to you about species, then this will become clear. Deer versus ibex versus thar, है ना? ये देखा था समझ गए? And then बाकी the 5 ape, the different ape species. If you have read about it, you will also know there are greater apes and lesser apes. जैसे डिवाइड करते हैं तो आगे वो आगे देखेंगे. अभी के लिए keep on writing them, ठीक है? Okay, so I think there's only one doubt till now. Okay. Santosh, the initial few lectures are going to be here. Otherwise, of course, this is a part of the GS Foundation course here at Sunya IAS. In case you are interested, you can also reach out to our mentor or you can just see what are the course details. Okay. It's a 4-stage program. You have access to NCRTs, the foundation classes, prelims crash course and mains crash course, right? So these are all the things that are there. Okay. So I will start now. The very first doubt that you have asked me is again related to a topic that is edge effect. Okay, again remember in which topic have we done this? Ecotone. ठीक है, again फिर से क्या है, what is an ecotone? Transition zone between two ecosystems. First of all, you should know what is definition of an ecotone. Transition zone between two ecosystems, or this is also known as a zone of tension. Fine. Second, what are the examples related to ecotone? We have done at least 4 examples in the class. One is mangrove. When I say mangrove is an ecotone, in between which two ecosystems is it a land and water? ठीक है, terrestrial and aquatic. One more point, estuaries. Now estuaries is an ecotone between when river meets sea. Okay, this is an example. Now what had we seen again? Remember that one of the defining features in an ecotone is going to be higher biodiversity. Okay. So just a very fancy name for higher biodiversity is nothing but edge effect. That's it. In regions में, let's say this is ecosystem 1, there is an ecosystem 2. Ecotone is this intersection part. In this part, in this edge or the zone of tension, you find high biodiversity. The higher biodiversity is nothing but the edge effect. Okay? And the species that you will find in this area is edge species. अब आपको बताओ और क्या डाउट है इसमें? सिंपल इस जोन में यू विल फाइंड इफ यू कंपेयर 1 and 2 कोई भी इकोसिस्टम में इन द इकोटोन देयर इज हायर बायोडाइवर्सिटी, मोर डेंसिटी ऑफ ऑर्गेनिजम्स, मोर वैरायटी ऑफ स्पीशीज. ओके, इसी चीज को हम बोलते हैं दिस इज एन एज इफेक्ट. इफ यू सी इनफैक्ट आई थिंक टेस्ट 2 में क्वेश्चन भी एज इफेक्ट पे है कि नहीं, अटेम्प्ट करा है किसी का क्वेश्चन है यहाँ पे? द क्वेश्चन ऑफ टेस्ट 2, द क्वेश्चन ऑन एज इफेक्ट. वो एक इन दैट जस्ट वन क्वेश्चन यू विल जस्ट अंडरस्टैंड. लेक्शन देना मुझे. अगेन द पीपल जो भी देख रहा है स्पेशली ऑनलाइन ऑफलाइन, तो आई कैन डायरेक्टली सी एंड टेल यू. So you already get the MCQs on a daily basis. Okay, the question number 4 of not day 2 but day 1, lecture 1 का question number 4 किसने attempt करा इसको? ठीक है, the question says edge effect is the effect observed at the boundary often resulting in decreased biodiversity. एक बार जल्दी से read करो question. Hansika, you can just mention what doubt you had. देखा इसका क्या होना चाहिए, सही है गलत है? Why? High biodiversity often resulting in decrease in biodiversity nahi, it is increase in biodiversity. So first statement directly tells you that. Second, ecotone is a zone of junction or a transition between two areas, ठीक है? Then the edge effect can lead to presence of unique species that are specially adapted to the conditions found. ऐसा हो सकता है? बिल्कुल. तो इसमें what is the answer? Only two. हाँ. हाँ. Right. हाँ, if you go into that particular detail, that is right, ठीक है, but यहाँ पे biomes का general meaning is that we are talking of two specific regions. Okay, of course if you nitpick, and now of course अब आप लोग को you know the difference between the two, the ideal word should have been ecosystems. ठीक है, तो वहां पे ideally it should have been ecosystems. If you want to make that correction also आप कर सकते हो, अगर वो सोच के गलत करा है तो ठीक है, then conceptually you are absolutely fine. Okay, now let's start our discussion for lecture number 3. Yesterday we were discussing about the different interactions between species. The very first that we had done was interaction. We are talking of mutualism. Types of species we had done. The second thing that we were doing is okay, and we had also started competition, but before that I had told you I'll make you write down something related to figs. Okay, now figs are very interesting creatures in that sense. Okay, let's say this is a part that you want to know. Okay, so we are talking about a fig tree and a wasp. Now the very interesting thing to note here, that the fig tree and the wasp, they have specialized in the sense that we know there's a lock and a key. Okay, so there's only a specific kind of key that can unlock. Okay, so in the same manner, in a fig tree the pollination can only be done by a wasp. Now generally speaking, if you have any flower, it is not insect specific. Okay, it does not have to be that only this insect can pollinate that particular flower. So this is a very unique thing that you see in the nature, the evolution that has become. So when we talk about mutualism, there are different types of mutualism. This is a case, this is known as actually obligate mutualism. Obligate mutualism को आप, how you can understand this? One example you already know of obligate mutualism. The first example is, let's say, the corals. Second example here can be this fig tree and wasp. Obligate का simple मतलब ये हुआ, they cannot live without each other. Okay, in normal sense what will happen, if there's a normal fruit or a tree etc., any other insect can also pollinate, so their life will still go on. They are not very specific. So here in the case of corals, the moment the algae, that is the zooxanthellae, the moment it dies, the coral will also die. The coral cannot live without it. Okay, so in mutualism, here there is a very specific example. Okay, so here when we talk about कि obligate mutualism is a sub part, usme this example will come of fig tree and a wasp. That fig tree is only pollinated by wasp, and again the eggs of the wasp are laid here. Okay, that also helps. Okay, so यहाँ पे एक छोटी सी heading लिखो, and this part we will write down. This is more specific in nature. No, but oh, this is actually under mutualism only. We had started competition, so maybe as a note you can write this down. Okay, okay, excellent, Ritu. Blast of ego orientalis, but of course we can even go in more detail, but still very good. So here what you just want to know, हम बस उतना सा part लिखेंगे यहाँ पे. By note, we are just talking about, just write down fig tree and a wasp. इस पर I'll just give you a very small write up. Fig tree and a wasp. Okay, so here you can write down each fig species has evolved with its own wasp. Each fig species has evolved with its own wasp, WASP. Fig, FIG, fig species has evolved with its own specific wasp, full stop. Okay, for your understanding, I'm making you write down, it is just like a lock and key mechanism. The moment you read this, तो आपको लगेगा कि हाँ, for any lock there's a specific key. You cannot use any other key to open a lock. It's like a key and a lock mechanism dash करके only a particular wasp can enter the fig's small opening. Only a particular wasp can open the fig's small opening. Dash करके we'll write this opening is known as ostiole. OSTIOLE. Okay, only a specific wasp species can enter into the fig's small opening called ostiole, full stop. And we'll again link it to the last class. This is why figs are keystone species. Figs produce fruit all around the year, right? This is why the figs are keystone species. Okay. And the last thing, this relationship is known as obligate mutualism. This relationship is known as obligate mutualism. ठीक है, तो normally there is a normal pollination. This is an example of specialized pollination. It is very specific in nature. ठीक है, and this is how this has evolved. So last line लिखोगे, this example tells us three things. This example tells us co-evolution, specialized pollination, and of course the part you've written, obligate mutualism. Pollination and obligate mutualism. ठीक है, हाँ हाँ वो भी होता है. अब इसमें आप सोच रहे हो कि मैंने बोला स्पेशलाइज्ड पॉलिनेशन, बट इफ आई टेक अ नॉर्मल केस ऑफ पॉलिनेशन, लेट्स से यू हैव फ्लावर एंड यू हैव अ हनी बी एटसेट्रा, तो वो व्हाई इज दैट नॉट स्पेशलाइज्ड? बिकॉज़ दे कैन इजीली चेंज देयर पार्टनर्स. They are not host specific in this sense. These are very specific. This is the main point of difference. And the let's say the whole evolution, इसलिए साथ में बोल रहे हैं co-evolution, इसीलिए इतना specific host specific हो जाता है कि ये एक particular wasp species is only going to enter this ostiole and then help in pollination part. ठीक है? Is this clear? So now we'll come back to the next part here. We were continuing, we were discussing competition. ठीक है? अब competition में this is how this looks. ठीक है, the wasp, this is pollinating it. This leaf cutter ants, याद है? These are fungus farmers या bacteria farmers? Fungus farmers. ठीक है. Commensalism, I'll talk to you. We were discussing competition. ठीक है, we had written this. अब competition में this is another thing that you also need to know. Let's see, generally it was assumed if there is a competition, it is the dominant species. It is going to ultimately kill or wipe out the, let's say, less or the weaker species. तो हम लोग को the initial chain of thought was that only the dominant species is going to survive. But again, this is an example of evolution that as time flew by, this is again a very good, let's say, representation कि the species started to do resource partitioning. So we see this also, but of course, if there is a dominant species, the dominant species can also kill or at least outcompete or wipe off the native species also. Where do you see that? Remember, invasive species. इन्वेजिव स्पीशीज अल्टीमेटली आउट कम्पीट द नेटिव स्पीशीज, है ना। तो ऐसा है कि यस, इन मेनी केसेस द स्पीशीज विच आर वेरी प्रोडक्टिव डोमिनेंट, they will wipe out or they will utilize the entire resource, which means there is nothing left for the other species. Okay, but we also see resource partition, okay, happening. अब ये देखो image, okay, अब यहां पे in the first, we'll start with the very first image, then second, then third. In the first image, the entire tree has which color of birds? Yellow. ठीक है, अब इसको जो भी कलर है, but of course मुझे तो yellow दिख रहा है ये, this is yellow. But as time moves on, so what you will see, you have certain red birds also come in, okay, but again after some time what will happen, there is an understanding that let's say the trunk will only be utilized by the red birds, okay, whereas the canopy will be utilized by let's say the different birds. So this is nothing but resource partitioning. अब इससे हमें दो चीजें और पता चलती हैं. रिसोर्स पार्टिशनिंग ऑल्सो टेल्स अस अनदर कॉन्सेप्ट दैट वी हैव रेड. व्हाट इज दैट? फिर से यस, वेरी गुड, नीश. और नीश का जो कॉन्सेप्ट है, इट्स वेरी आइडियल इन नेचर, बट इन रियलिटी यू हैव समथिंग नोन एज रियलाइज्ड नीश. नाउ व्हेन यू स्टडी अबाउट सो मेनी इंटरैक्शंस, आइडियल केस में क्या है, हां इस स्पीशी का ये एरिया है, इस स्पीशी का ये एरिया है, दिस इज द एरिया. Conventionally also humans, this is the area for humans, this is the area for animals, but what is the reality? We are getting so much into their area that ultimately a leopard etc has to come to your house and say hi. Okay, this is what human animal conflict. In the same manner, you have so many different species, so after a point of time some of these niche may overlap, so ultimately जो बचता है, जो reality में बचेगा, that is known as realized niche. Okay, conceptually ideally what is there, that is niche, but even then there are some overlapping because there can be resource partitioning, there can be competition between species, the species may also fight off. अभी आगे ये भी देखेंगे, some species also release let's say some of chemicals to kill other let's say prey also. ठीक है, so what ultimately you are left with is realized niche. Okay, so here just one line we'll write. Competition में I think till here you had written, okay, this was one example. So here you will just write that earlier, हाँ competition में वजह से एक छोटा सा नोट है, so that, and by the way this concept, इतना छोटा सा भी concept आपके NCERT में mentioned है by the way. Okay, this image is not there, but they've just mentioned it in one small very paragraph. Okay, so this will also help you understand this better. Okay, अरे इंसेक्ट वर्सेस गोट कंपटीशन इज सिंपल, दैट यहां पे कोई भी, हियर दिस इज मेंशन्ड बट यू कैन ऐड मोर स्पीशीज आल्सो. द पॉइंट इज दे आर जस्ट फाइटिंग फॉर वन सिंगल रिसोर्स. दिस इज द आइडिया बिहाइंड दिस इमेज. ओके, इंसेक्ट कैन आल्सो बी अ ग्रास हॉपर. ठीक है, एक और चीज, व्हाट इज दिस? सिकाडा. ठीक है, सिकाडा इज आल्सो एन इंटरेस्ट, दे आल्सो मेक अ हमिंग नॉइज. आपने सुना है साइलेंट वैली नेशनल पार्क? एनी आइडिया वेयर दिस इज? उत्तराखंड. ठीक है, आप गए हो? अच्छा, उत्तराखंड से. और कोई? अच्छा ठीक है, कोई और? एनीबडी एल्स? साइलेंट वैली बस यू आर बहुत एकदम पास में ही है, इट इज इन केरला. ठीक है, तो व्हाई इज द नेम साइलेंट वैली? ओके, द नेम इज साइलेंट वैली बिकॉज ऑफ द एब्सेंस ऑफ नॉइजी सिकाडाज. So cicadas are your insect. ठीक है, so sometimes when I just talk about Silent Valley, so I tell it is the absence of noisy insects called cicadas. And this year there was a question कि cicadas and two other things, what are these example of? तो अब अगर ऐसी चीजें नहीं सुनी है तो एकदम से सवाल नहीं बनेगा. By the way, this is again a question, Silent Valley पे a kind of a question that was asked many years back, not a direct question. Okay, so I'm just linking a thing because a friend of yours just asked about the insect part. इंसेक्ट की इतनी, देयर आर सो मेनी स्पीशीज ऑफ इंसेक्ट्स. ओके, वी कैन नॉट रिमेंबर ऑल ऑफ देम ऑफ कोर्स. ठीक है, तो यहां पे आई थिंक दिस इमेज इज ओनली सिग्निफाइंग दैट दे आर कंपीटिंग फॉर द सेम रिसोर्स, दैट्स ऑल. ओके, सो इज दैट क्लियर? ओके, सो another example, and this of course is not a part of main notes, this you will write in your side notes, that Silent Valley National Park, Kerala. Why is the name Silent Valley? Varna, you know that humming noise sometimes that you see in the forest, etc. Chick chick. So many times it is because of these cicadas. ठीक है? That is there. Okay, coming back. अभी did we write anything or not? ठीक है. हाँ. So we'll write down conventionally. Conventionally, it was believed that during the process of evolution, the dominant species will outcompete the weaker ones. During the process of evolution, the dominant species will outcompete the weaker ones. In fact, अगर आप बोलो, what is Darwin's law? Survival of the fittest. So what this simply means, जितनी भी weak species है वो wipe off हो जाएंगी. If you apply that knowledge here also, what does it mean? All the other species will be taken off. But in reality, sometimes this does not happen. Okay. So what did you write? It was believed that will be what? And if you want to write in the bracket also, you can mention Darwin's law. Okay, that is survival of the fittest also in this. Darwin is Charles Darwin. Yes, please speak. ये लिखा आपने? Then please write down, however, we have seen species to coexist through a process known as resource partitioning. We have seen species to coexist. We have seen the species to coexist. साथ साथ में रहेंगे. Co-exist. We've seen the species to coexist through the process of resource partitioning. Through the process of resource partitioning. Okay. This sometimes leads to niche restriction. Niche restriction. Niche restriction, NICHE, niche restriction to avoid competition. This sometimes leads to niche restriction to avoid competition. Okay, तो competition से हमने link कर दिया इसको. Then just write down as a note. Here we'll write down this term also, realized niche. And after few classes are done, whatever terms we have used, I will tell you to make a glossary of your terms. सारे terms बाद में करना एक बार. तो आपके notes रहेंगे एक साथ. You will have your terms at one place. You will have map-based locations at one place. So that will help you very much have a very good command. ठीक है? So just write down as a note, realized niche, put a dash. The concept of niche is a idealistic representation. Concept of niche. We know that niche is the unique functional role of a species. Okay? The concept of a niche is an ideal representation. हाँ बोलो बोलो. एक सेकेंड. It is an idealistic. हाँ ठीक है. It is an idealistic or ideal representation. Okay. However, if we factor population interactions and changing habitat. However, if we factor population interactions and changing habitat, we get a more practical niche dash करके known as realized niche. And habitat, वो मैंने क्या बोला था? Habitat. हाँ, for changing habitat, we get a more practical niche, also known as realized niche. So just think that in theory, let's say if the niche was this big circle, the realized niche will be a smaller circle. That's it. इसका simple यही मतलब है. And why are we going for this? Because again the species have also become smart. They don't want to die. बिल्कुल सिंपल सी बात है, किसी को नहीं मरना पसंद. सो इन दिस ऑल्सो, okay, so which is also known as realized niche. Okay, so from this one concept we also know another concept. You tell me what is trophic cascade? Yellow strain में पढ़ा था, and it is again if you bring one species it will have multiple benefits. Okay, right? ठीक है. Is competition clear? Okay, let's हाँ अब देखेंगे the next two. In fact, before parasitism, write about predation because both of them are negative. Okay. नेगेटिव सही बोला मैंने, गलत बोला? Yes, predation this. Okay, now here please note you don't have to draw this diagram. In predation we will just write the basic definition. Okay, so here predation you need to know just two terms. There is a prey and there is a predator. Okay, so here again the predator captures, kills and eats the prey. बस उसको अलग से मत लिखो. An animal of another species, just write in this interaction predator kills and eats the prey. That's it. And then the example, because we've written plus and minus, if you want for your benefit you can write that one is benefited or harmed, but by now this will become very automatic to you. So ultimately these are your notes, only you should be able to understand. Okay, so leopard, tiger, cheetah, ठीक है. In the coming classes we'll also see all these are what? Big cats. In the first class I just had mentioned International Big Cat Alliance. Yes, sir. How many cats are covered in that? Any idea? चलो अभी के लिए याद रखो 7 cats, but कौन सी 7 cats है we'll see then later on. And then we'll also see which cats are found in India, which are not. And again, I'm saying big cats. Okay. Is predation clear? Predation so simple है. Parasitism is slightly more detailed. Predation, we just remember plus minus prey predator, and this is going to be leading to the death of the prey. Now put the heading parasitism. ठीक है. Parasitism again same. Okay, so the definition is going to be same. One species is harmed while the other benefits. Okay. Second, you can write this also. You can have small sized organisms. These are the parasites which will live on the host. ठीक है. होस्ट क्या होगा? अच्छा, पैरासाइट के लिए होस्ट बहुत जरूरी है. It is very important for the parasite to have a host. It is from the host that they will derive the relation, that all the nourishment. Okay, so that is one. This is also something that you can write. And when you write this, put a big, very big star mark. I'll tell you why. So what we are saying, bacteria, and if you even want to add, you can even add fungus. Bacteria, fungus and virus, all these can be parasites of plants and animals. तीनों लिखो. Bacteria, fungus and virus. Okay. And when you have written this, there is just one thing that you should draw in your notes. This will again get repeated. See, do you remember the process of decomposition? Yes. And more than that, I had talked about decomposers. Okay. So in very, बस ये साथ you just write down with me. Again, something very conceptual, but we get confused a lot. Now, I'll use two colors because these two are same. But what are decomposers? And yes, no, I was also examples of, right? So here, same. But the very important thing to know is the difference. ये याद रखो. This table directly tells you virus cannot be a decomposer. अच्छा, you want to see that? अभी पे प्लांट्स और इस पे मत आना. दिस एग्जांपल जस्ट वी आर जस्ट अभी राइटिंग अबाउट ऑर्गेनिजम्स, टिल ऑर्गेनिजम्स. ओके, ये लिख लिया. अब अभी बोलेंगे वी विल राइट दीज एग्जांपल्स. ये अभी मत लिखो, आई विल मेक यू राइट दिस डाउन. उससे पहले विच ऑर्गेनिजम्स कैन बी, सो डिकम्पोजर्स विल बी बैक्टीरिया एंड फंगस, याद रखो. पैरासाइट्स विल बी बैक्टीरिया, फंगस एंड वायरस. व्हाई इज दिस दैट वायरस क्या है? बिकॉज वायरस आर होस्ट स्पेसिफिक, दे नीड अ होस्ट. So what happens in decomposition? Remember, let's say there's a leaf. हमने देखा था leaf cutter ants and fungus. So the fungus has the ability to decompose it directly, but virus ऐसा नहीं कर सकता. Virus needs a host. They are host dependent. Okay, so that is why all of this can be a parasite. But remember, virus cannot be. This is a very conceptual question. इसमें भी नहीं, science and tech में या environment mix, this question has been asked at least 2 or 3 times in the recent past. Okay, just to check your conceptual clarity. You have a decomposer. We will do this in more detail in the process of decomposition. I'll tell you all the stages in the process of decomposition. But the second part is these are parasites. Who can be a parasite? First of all, no. All the three can be a parasite. Okay. Now let's move back. Okay. Up we will write just a small heading: types of parasitism. Okay. Types of parasitism. So here what we will mention this as, जैसे ये लिखा है types of parasites में. So one is ecto, we will write about ectoparasites. One is endo, you can also write this. This is SI, ectoparasites. Ecto means something which is outside, okay, outside the body. So when you see this example, this is outside the body. This kind of leech is outside the body. These will be ectoparasites. Okay. Endoparasites are within the body. Okay. So they will get nourishment from your body. For example, there are tapeworms, roundworms, etc. in the body. Okay. And there is also a reason why you were बचपन में भी सबने या अभी भी deworming tablets सुनी होंगे. Okay. So again, that is the reason that you want to kill a lot some of these parasites which are harmful to the body. Okay. So you have ectoparasites, you have endoparasites, and the third is brood parasitism. Brood wala abhi I'll tell you, but first of all please write down ecto and endo. Brood may, if you want, you could just make a small nest. This is my nest. Okay, so here I'll give you the example of cuckoo. Abhi ke liye first we'll write ecto and endo. The image also tells this is endo, this is let's say in the intestines or inside the body. Endo is inside the body. ठीक है. It can be in the blood, tissue, gastrointestinal. ठीक है. Gastro is related to the stomach. Intestines we know large or let's say small, कहीं भी हो सकते हैं. And here you have usually insects, arachnids. अगर अभी समझ में नहीं आ रहे तो don't worry about it. सिर्फ insects भी लिख सकते हो. ठीक है. So examples like ticks, mites, spiders, these are all examples of ectoparasite outside the body. So actually the example of arachnid is spider. Okay, so when we read about the plant and the animal kingdom classification, in that you have various classifications that I'll tell you in coming classes. अभी के लिए just या तो सिर्फ example लिख लो. Ticks, for example, mites is spiders, right? We know spiders. Spider-Man fan कौन कौन है यहाँ पे? तो at least we know spiders, right? Okay, so one is outside, one is inside. and third is brood parasitism. The moment you are done with this, you let me know, then I'll explain brood parasitism. People online also, are you? I hope you're able to follow. ठीक है, ये भी लिख रहे हो? Nematodes, trematodes, cestodes, protozoa. इनके भी अभी एग्जाम्पल और ज्यादा कॉमन एग्जाम्पल आर देयर इन द प्रीवियस स्लाइड. वी विल ऑल्सो राइट दैट. ठीक है, लिख लिया? जस्ट अ शो ऑफ हैंड्स आफ्टर यू हैव रिटन, तो आई विल गेट टू नो. ठीक है, गिव यू 10 मोर सेकेंड्स. लिख लो फिर, यू कैन राइट दिस डाउन. लिख लिया? अच्छा, देखो ये बड़े कॉम्प्लिकेटेड नाम लिख रहे हैं. इनसे आसान जो नाम है, विच आर फाउंड, ये सुने होंगे आपने, टेप वॉर्म, राउंड वॉर्म. दीज आर एग्जांपल्स ऑफ दीज स्ट्रॉन्ग नेम्स. ये अभी अलग से लिखेंगे, अलग से. ओके, अभी टिल नाउ वी हैव ओनली रिटन दिस, एंड आई हैव टू टेल यू दिस ब्रूड पैरासिटिज्म. ठीक है, इन फैक्ट एज वी मूव अलोंग आई टेल यू सम वेरी फेमस अदर. फॉर एग्जाम्पल एक दो और मैं आपको अच्छे एग्जाम्पल और बताऊंगा. तो अगेन स्पेसिफिकली इन पैरासिटिज्म, in commensalism, थोड़ा स्पेस छोड़ना, so that you can write 1 or 2 more examples later on. Especially parasitism में स्पेस छोड़ना. ठीक है, okay. Now brood parasitism बहुत सिंपल सा एग्जांपल है. You would have seen this in cartoons also. Let's say there is a bird who is taking care of its nest. Okay, that bird, for example, this is the nest. It has yellow colored eggs. So what will cuckoo do? Cuckoo will very smartly lay its egg. Okay, but this bird is taking care of all the eggs. Okay, so in that sense it has to spend more energy in the nurture and care. So yahan pe cuckoo has left the nest and gone. So what will happen sometimes when let's say the egg will start to grow bigger, sometimes it will lead to displacement, and let's say this will fall down. Okay, so what has happened here in this case, this particular egg has benefited, ultimately it will get hatched, etc. But the native eggs that were there, they are getting harmed. They are not getting the attention. They may also die off. This happens. So it is negative for the main host species, because from the host species we are getting all the nutrition. But of course it is positive for, in this case, for cuckoo. So this is nothing but brood parasitism. ठीक है, ये समझ में आ रहा है? तो जस्ट राइट, एक छोटा सा हेडिंग लिखो ब्रूड पैरासिटिज्म का. हाँ, अलग से. दिस इज अ सेपरेट एग्जांपल. मतलब विद इन अ टाइप्स ऑफ पैरासिटिज्म दैट वी सी, देयर इज अनदर टाइप दैट इज नोन एज ब्रूड पैरासिटिज्म. ठीक है, ओके. सो हियर राइट, it is a strategy. Brood parasitism is a strategy where the parasite relies on host to raise its young ones. Where the parasite, bracket we can even write in this case cuckoo or quail, relies on the host to raise its young ones. Next, BP is brood parasitism. BP can negatively impact host species. BP is brood parasitism. We're not writing it again. BP can negatively impact host species as the host may spend resources. BP may negatively impact host species as the host may spend resources on parasites offspring. अब समझ में आ रहा है? offspring, OFFSPRING, offspring मतलब बच्चा. हाँ, एक सेकेंड, हाँ, एक्सपेंड या स्पेंड रिसोर्सेस ऑन द पैरासाइट्स ऑफ स्प्रिंग rather than their own, rather than their own. इसी में एग्जाम्पल लिखो. One is I've written in cuckoo, and second example here is cow bird. ठीक है, cuckoo and cow bird. And then last that you have to add here, इसमें only write down the examples. For example, this dodder plant, Cuscata, mistletoe loranthus, these are parasites living on flowering plants. And second, you can write down tapeworm, roundworm, malarial parasites. ये तो हम already लिख चुके हैं. If you want to add again, if you want, of course, but we have written. This is the last thing you will add. So पहले, if you want, whatever examples are there in your notes, first of all, remember that. उसके बाद ही, let's say in the previous questions, because most of the things I've added here itself. Okay? उसके बाद ही go beyond than this. Otherwise, generally, even remembering all of this will take a lot of effort at your end. देखो, dodder plant, Cuscata, mistletoe loranthus, these are on the flowering plants, tapeworm, roundworm, malarial parasites, okay, bacteria, fungus, virus. These are all the common parasites. Okay, so initially ones are on flowers, the other ones are on humans. Okay, किसी को ये पता है malarial parasite के example? Of course, you will read this in science and tech. तब आप में जब पढ़ोगे Plasmodium falciparum and other Plasmodium species, these are again something you will read. Okay, Plasmodium vivax भी है, but इसमें bracket या कहीं star mark लगा के science and tech, क्योंकि this मच्छर और mosquito based questions, many questions will come in the exam. वो अलग है. Anopheles, Aedes, etc. are the names of mosquito. We are talking about the parasite which is there. ठीक है, जो आप Anopheles कह रहे हो, there is also Anopheles, there is Aedes aegypti. These are the different mosquito varieties. So let's say there is a female, etc. male, right? And उसमें भी you know that. चलो ठीक है, ज़्यादा साइंस में नहीं जाएंगे अभी. Coming back to this part here. इसको लिख लिया आपने सबने? ठीक है. नाउ इसी के नीचे लिखो, what are the differences between parasitism and predation? This is a logical question. Yesterday also you asked me, so both of them are plus and minus, then what is the difference? So what is the difference between parasitism and predation? The answer to this we had already discussed yesterday. अब आप मुझे इसका आंसर बताओ. 2 पॉइंट्स है मेन. आप ट्राई करो पीछे. हाँ, एक में बिल्कुल बढ़िया, सही सही. और कोई सेकंड पॉइंट?
Parasites, they feed. Parasites are smaller.
हाँ हाँ, ठीक है ठीक है ठीक है. So here 2 points of main difference are there. First thing you can say that in prey and predator, ठीक है, इसको अपने शब्द में लिखना. Again, I'm not dictating this, but I'm just repeating. You have to write 2 points. First is in predation, what usually happens that it is the prey stronger species get benefit, the weaker species harmed. This is predation. In case of parasitism, it is the weak species that is benefited and it is the strong species or the host that is harmed. First point of difference. Okay. The second point of difference is in predation, death is almost certain, whereas in case of parasitism, the death is very much prolonged. It can take a very long time. Okay, so these are the 2 major points of difference. याद मत करो, अब आप सोचो इसको. सबके एग्जाम्पल देखे हैं, ठीक है. मॉस्किटो एवरीबडी नोस, राइट? अब सोचो, जस्ट थिंक अबाउट इट एंड देन आस्क. इफ यू कंपेयर मॉस्किटो एंड योरसेल्फ, who is the host? You're the host. Who is more powerful? You. Same example socho in case of predation. Think about a tiger and let's say deer. Weak and strong. Which is benefited, which is harmed? That is the first example. And second is the ability to survive. Simple. Okay, so here ये मैंने लिखा है इसलिए so that you remember, but my point is because if we have discussed something तो organically भी on the spot सोचने की we have to develop the capacity. Okay, other than that here I have put a star mark. You will read more about this या फिर whenever you read about let's say malaria तो Plasmodium vivax या Plasmodium falciparum etc के बारे में and in general mosquitoes you can read. In my classes I'll tell you in more detail mosquito control. I'll tell you something like a Gambusia fish which is used to control mosquitoes, other ways to control mosquitoes from an environment perspective, पर वहां पे भी science and tech का overlap रहेगा थोड़ा बहुत. Okay, so we'll see that also. Fine. Okay, एक last example एक और लिखो. This I will tell you when I tell you tree species. Just write down one example. हाँ, example of root parasitism लिखना. Example of root parasitism. So example of root parasite. Okay, so here root parasitism. One of the very prominent example of root parasitism is Sentinel album, or in simple words you can say this as sandalwood. और जो रूट पैरासाइट होती है उसको बोलते हैं होस्टोरिया. आगे जब पढ़ेंगे इसके बारे में, इसकी वुड के बारे में एक्सेट्रा, सो यू विल ऑलरेडी नो दैट इट एग्जिबिट्स रूट पैरासिटिज्म. This is the root parasite, the name of the root parasite. अभी छोड़ो, मैं आगे बताऊंगा. But it is Sentinel album, but if you want you can write it, but it would be better if we write it later on also, but the sandalwood is more easy to remember for you. ठीक है. Now, so we've covered 4. Now let's come to the last 2. One is Commensalism, okay, and then is Amensalism. So please write down Commensalism. स्पेलिंग बिल्कुल ध्यान से लिखो. स्पेलिंग के बाद कोड है इसका प्लस एंड जीरो. प्लस एंड जीरो, प्लस एंड जीरो. Commensalism is plus and zero. Amensalism is minus and zero. This is plus and zero. And again, you don't have to cram it. Your examples should tell you. Okay. So here, remember we have seen this example. These small bodyguards and then a big shark. अब you tell me. So for example, there is a leftover. Plus, in जो small fishes के जो predator है, the moment it says a big shark, it will not hunt them down. Okay. So what is this? 0 plus. There is no impact on the big shark, but of course the small fishes, they are benefited because they get free food, plus they are not also killed. Okay, so that is one example. So यहाँ पे again you just want to write this. It benefits the other, or other is neither harmed or benefited. Very simple. हाँ हाँ नहीं, पर इसमें हाँ हाँ बोलो आप बोलो. हाँ नहीं, होस्ट को हार्म हो रहा था. अब देखो, इफ मान लो ये पैरासाइट कब बन जाता, अगर ये जो छोटे फिशेस है ना, ये इनको खा रहे होते. ये इनके बस आसपास घूम रहे हैं, टहल रहे हैं. दे आर ओनली मूविंग विद देम, दे आर नॉट हार्मिंग इट. इन पैरासिटिज्म प्लस एंड माइनस इज देयर. दिस इज गेटिंग पॉजिटिव बेनिफिट, द अदर इज हार्म्ड. लेट्स से ब्लड इज टेकन आउट और सम अदर हार्म इन टर्म्स ऑफ रिसोर्सेज, इन टर्म्स ऑफ स्पेस. इन दिस केस दिस इज विल स्टे एज इट इज. तो जो ये खाने की बात कर रहे हैं, सो इन्होंने खाना खाया, इट विल लेफ्ट, जो लेफ्ट ओवर है. ऐसा नहीं है कि दे आर गोइंग टू कम एंड बाइट ऑफ द फूड विच दे आर गोइंग टू हैव. इट इज ओनली द लेफ्ट ओवर दैट दे विल टेक. सो अगेन इंटरैक्शंस वी हैव टू अंडरस्टैंड देम. एक बार अभी अच्छे से समझेंगे, देन ऑफ कोर्स देयर विल बी नो प्रॉब्लम. सो फर्स्ट, हाउ मेनी ऑफ यू हैव रिटन द डेफिनेशन? लिख ली. सेकंड थिंग, प्लीज राइट डाउन दिस suckerfish remora. Okay, there should not be a comma here. Suckerfish remora. This is suckerfish remora. It attaches itself to a shark. हाँ, ये example है. This is what we have to write. So suckerfish, it often attaches itself to a shark. You just only have to write this. That's it. And for explanation, if you want, you can write just one line that the sucker fish can Rakesh, you mean commensalism? I'll tell you other examples of commensalism or some other interaction.
So there was one line that you were dictating, the sucker fish.
मैंने क्या बोला था? हाँ मैं बता रहा हूँ ना. I just saw just a comments. I think just I wanted to confirm what was the issue. In case Rakesh you're wondering about, let's say, commensalism, so I will tell you certain examples, so don't worry. Now the sucker fish, okay, it feeds on the leftover. क्या फायदे? बिल्कुल सिंपल फायदे. पहला जो leftover होगा, eaten by the shark, they will eat it. So free food. Who doesn't like free food? One. Second, it's the predator of sucker fish. The predator of sucker fish the predators of sucker fish don't attack it seeing the presence of shark. Predators of sucker fish don't attack it seeing the presence of shark.
So why doesn't the shark attack the sucker fish?
Why doesn't? Then many times देखो इसमें, for example, in the same case, it is already had or it has fed. तो यहाँ पे their evolutionary mechanism is such that they will move at a very good distance. Shark is also going to, जो कि frontal vision वो सामने देखेगी. It is not going to again back and forth, etc. And this is again a process of evolution. हाँ हाँ प्रेजेंस तो पता होगी ना, आसपास ही रहते हैं, बट अगेन it is something that is happening throughout. ठीक है, तो अगेन इट्स अ काइंड ऑफ एन एवोल्यूशन दैट हैज हैपेंड, है ना. दैट इज द फर्स्ट एग्जांपल. हाँ या नहीं यही तो बात है. अगर खाती तो देन अच्छा चलो, इफ इट वाज ईटिंग देम, व्हाट इज दैट इन इंटरेक्शन? बस predation, prey and predator, very easy. Okay, so that is the very first example that we have seen. Second example, please write down, is epiphytes. The spelling of epiphytes is this: EPIPHYTES. 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 Okay, now for epiphytes, just write down, these are prominent in tropical rainforests. Epiphytes are prominent in tropical rainforest. Okay, अब देखो epiphytes होते कैसे हैं यहाँ पे. If we don't have a, let's see, this is your diagram for epiphytes. In tropical rainforest we have big trees. ठीक है, on those trees these are epiphytes. Okay, these can be certain climbers, etc. Okay, these are there. अब what they will do, please remember I have said this is an example of commensalism. इसका मतलब the epiphyte is not harming the tree, it is only benefiting it. So here what is the benefit that they get? Only one benefit, they get support from the tree. Okay, but they don't take food from the tree. If they were taking fruit from the tree, क्या हो जाएगा? Parasite. Okay, so that is how we'll write. तो ये, and please remember epiphytes are one of the most, जब भी हम पढ़ते हैं tropical rainforest, there are only two things that you will generally talk about. One, they have very good canopy. Okay, and second is the presence of epiphytes, tropical rainforest. If I say canopy, and if I, let's say, if I have to draw something like a canopy, so generally speaking, for example, this is your canopy, for example, right? तो यहाँ पे जो भी trees होंगे, very prominent canopies, thick, big trees you will get. अब इसका downside क्या होता है? The bigger trees will shade the smaller trees. The big trees will take up all the sunlight, but on these big trees you can have certain, let's say, epiphytes. Okay, is this clear? So what we have understood, epiphytes are found in tropical rainforest. Okay, you know where a tropical rainforest? Very good, sir. In the tropical area. Where is a rainforest, sir? Where there is a rain, there is a forest. Okay, so now, yes, of course, very close to The tropics, tropical rainforest will have the highest biodiversity. Highest. ऐसा क्यों होगा?
Because of the
Only two things. Only two things.
because of the high vegetation.
No, the vegetation is a consequence. What is the factor? The factor are two things. Yes. Yes.
Precipitation.
Barso re megha barso. Okay. So rain or precipitation. Only these two things are there. So these are. This is the equator. Very close to equator, you will have tropical rainforest. ठीक है? In fact, when you go from the tropics to the poles, the sunlight instead of being direct will be more slanting. ठीक है? And what will happen? The vegetation will reduce as a consequence. ठीक है? So here, please remember what I said. Epiphytes are a constituent or characteristics of tropical rainforest. That is the thing that we've spoken about. Okay. So here now coming back to what we were discussing. इसको लिख सकते हो. You can even write they can live on the surface of plants. अच्छा, you want to close this? Okay, and here all you have to know that they are here only for support sunlight, and in this you can even add one more thing, that they don't take nutrition from the tree. This will make it even more specific so that you don't get confused if you read it later on. Yes, good points, Mukesh. Sorry? They don't take or they don't get nutrition from the tree. They only get support. Nutrition milega, to of course you know it will change. It will become something else, right? So is this clear? Okay. So what we will write here? And if you want to clarify this further, the tree gets no benefit. Of course, for tree it's a 0. That is why it is a commensalism. ठीक है?
But sir, can we say that the sunlight with the leaves in the sun?
नहीं, that is there. Okay. After this, we move to third interesting example. और उसके साथ I'll also tell you one very interesting thing. See this example. और इसका एक और advanced example you would have already seen in some of the cases. First of all, just think about it. There's a buffalo or any cattle. On the cattle, there's a bird known as egret, or sometimes known as cattle egret. Egret is actually name of a bird. ठीक है? In this case, what is happening? It gets a free ride. Okay? And here also, whatever is the leftover of eating, आसपास जाके वो खा सकते हैं. This is one example. This specific example can be the case of commensalism. एक और example है that you would have seen, बहुत शायद memes में या कहीं पे pages में. There's a crocodile. Crocodile ने मुंह खोला हुआ है. उसके दांतों में, in the teeth of the crocodile, there are some leftovers of food. A very smart bird will come. It will eat it. It will go away. And this happens again. It is not that कि sir वो trap नहीं हुई, or this may happen in some unfortunate cases also. Of course, in environment, unfortunate कुछ भी नहीं. Everything has a plan. Now, that specific case, what do you think that will be? The teeth of crocodile are getting cleaned, and the bird gets its food.
Mutualism.
सोचो.
Mutualism.
But is it obligate mutualism? ये बताओ.
No.
It is not. It is not. ठीक है? So you will see these kind of examples sometimes. किसको?
But then also the crocodile got the benefit, na?
Its teeth are getting cleaned. Leftover. But what you are saying, this can also be a point of confusion. Fair point. But वो food छीनने की वो to fight, you have to fight the crocodile, है ना? To उससे छीनने के लिए यहाँ पे क्या है? The food that is stuck. For example, when the food is stuck, what do? We do brushing the teeth. So in this sense, it is going to help in that, flossing, etc. ठीक है? So first of all, just write this example. किसका?
How do we write this buffalo वाला example?
अच्छा, इस पे ये लिखो, the cattle egret and the cattle. The cattle egret and the cattle. So here you can just write down, egret is the bird, so you can write down the bird Okay, again I'm using a very, let's say, very simple layman kind of a sentence, तो उसको बहुत ज़्यादा वो नहीं. Let's say the bird gets a free ride. So of course this is not there in a scientific journal. The bird gets a free ride and even some leftover food, whereas the cattle is not affected. Yes, that's also a very good example, Ritu. The example of sea anemone and hermit crab. अभी के लिए we'll write this. हाँ, तो free ride, some leftover food, whereas there is no impact on the cattle. Okay, and on the margins, if you want, you can write down the example I told you with the crocodile and the bird just for your memory or reference. But again, remember the case is very specific. Let's say when the crocodile opens its mouth, on its teeth there are some meat or any leftovers, and the bird takes it out. It helps in cleaning the teeth, let's say in this case, and the bird gets some food. तो वो है mutualism का example. Because sometimes in tests or some other place when you read, you may get confused. अरे ये तो हमने ऐसे देखा. मैं आपको एक और example बता सकता हूँ. Okay, that sometimes let's say they are sitting on this, but what if there is already they may have a wound. So sometimes when they sit on it, the parasites, they may eat the parasites, they may also help it. पर वो बहुत specific case हो जाएगा. Okay, ऐसा similar case in the barnacles and whales होता है. जैसे we have whales and you have barnacles. Write this as your homework. Okay, there are two specific examples I want you to read once. इसमें images देखना. Okay, because this is also where I can give you a lot of examples, but again थोड़ा सा आप भी interact करोगे, it will help you. One is barnacles and whales. I will also ask you what are barnacles, आप define करोगे, and then what kind of interaction is between barnacles and whales. Second example that you also should see is sea anemone and hermit crabs. CRABS, hermit crabs. Okay, these are your homeworks. इसको भी देखना. Cattle igrate वाला part, is that clear? Okay, the last point now we'll go to is Amensalism. Amen, AMEN. Amensalism. If you want, थोड़ी सी छोड़ सकते हो, or at least have some margins where you can add something else. क्योंकि जो अभी बाकी दो एग्जांपल्स देखे ना, you will also fit them somewhere in your notes. तो हो सकता है वो कोई ऐसा स्पेसिफिक हो तो थोड़ा सा, क्योंकि देखो this is going to be a very dynamic part. Any example that you get, okay, let's say now you go to previous question, something that one new thing you get, you should be able to add it. Okay, so then it will be a very good repository. हर चीज कनेक्ट हो रही है, organically link बन रहा है दिमाग में. Okay, now in Amensalism, what is the idea here?
One is negatively impacted and one is not impacted.
Very good. ठीक है, अब इसमें कुछ examples देखते हैं. So first of course you should know the definition. Okay, now here I'll tell you, I think one I'll tell you about antibiosis, one I'll tell you big tree small tree, and third I'll tell you about allelopathy. ठीक है, and don't be surprised, allelopathy was a question in mains also. Pre में नहीं पूछा, सीधे mains में पूछा. ठीक है, so first we'll write it's a negative association. If you want, नहीं तो सिर्फ code से, if you're able to understand, no issues, right? Here also the very first example is antibiosis, and you can draw a very simple diagram like this. Okay, the keyword can also be asked that what is antibiosis. तो यहां पे penicillium and bacteria के बीच में this example is there, right? So here what I told you, one is negatively impacted, for other there is no impact. So what will happen in this case? There is penicillium, it will release antibacterial compounds. This will kill or negatively harm the bacteria. Okay, and because of this, bacteria cannot have any impact on this. So for this penicillium it is 0, but for the bacteria it is negative. तो 0 and minus ये codes है ना, after you go back when you revise these terms, you should be able to do it yourself. The moment you see the example, you are able to think, acha, this is positive, negative, whatever is there. So then you don't have to then cram the examples. Okay. So here we will write this down as, okay, this for the from example you can write this. Okay, the fungus called the bread mold or penicillium, it produces penicillin. Penicillin नाम सुना है कभी? Why was penicillin famous? हाँ ठीक है ठीक है. So we'll write, and again, as the very first permanent antibiotic helped in the fighting the bacterial infections. Okay, so we'll write this fungus, which is the bread mold or penicillium. It produces penicillin. Penicillin here is an antibiotic. Again, a small fact that you have to find who discovered this. बहुत famous personality, शायद जीके में पहले पढ़ रखा हो. Something we generally read about. नहीं तो इस पे star mark, and this is also small homework. Who found? Okay. हाँ हाँ, for this for example. Okay, so it produces penicillin. Penicillin is an antibiotic, okay, which is antibacterial in nature. This is going to harm the bacteria, so bacteria भागेंगे or they will get killed off, so it's a negative impact on them. Okay, and penicillin के लिए फायदा क्या होगा? Again, it can access the food better, because then let's say this is food. Some food bacteria will eat, some food it will eat. So now when the bacteria is not there, it is good for it. But this is again after this has happened. Chalo, very good. Comment section में तो everybody has told the answer. Okay. So we'll just write till here that antibiotic which inhibits the growth of this certain bacteria. That is one. Okay. Pehla example. Second example is what we had seen, this big tree and small tree. So number one was antibiosis. ठीक है, इसमें सिर्फ आपको ये लिखना था. You only have to write the fungus called bread or penicillium produces penicillin. ठीक है. Penicillin is an antibiotic which inhibits the growth. Okay. Who had discovered penicillin? Alexander Fleming. Okay. That was the first example. Okay. Second example is big tree and a small tree. अच्छा, what did you miss? अच्छा अच्छा, पूरी लाइन मत लिखना, that is too much to write. Only this part here, that is only relevant. Okay. Till here, ठीक है, till a variety of bacteria. Okay. Second example is big tree and a small tree. Now, can anybody explain why is this an example of Amensalism?
Because the small tree is not getting any sort of sunlight,
So,
and also the roots of the big tree are
taking up the water also, right? Good, good. So, which is positive and which is negative and which is zero?
there is no positive.
For who?
For anyone, there is no positive.
Right, good, good, good.
The
Big tree
is zero. And
zero.
small tree
Right,
is
ठीक है. So this is some, हाँ बोलो. पर नहीं ठीक है, वो सही है, पर आप उसमें सिर्फ इसको सोच रहे हो, बिग ट्री को. द एग्जाम्पल इज बिग ट्री एंड स्मॉल ट्री. द पॉइंट इज द स्मॉल ट्री एबल टू इन्फ्लुएंस द बिग ट्री और नॉट? सन तो है अवेलेबल, बिग ट्री इज एबल टू गेट ऑल द लाइट. ओके, बट पॉइंट इज द स्मॉल ट्री इन एनी वे एबल टू इन्फ्लुएंस द बिग ट्री? हम लोग जब आप जो सोच रहे हो, आप सिर्फ सन को सोच रहे हो, बिग ट्री को सोच रहे हो. यू ब्रिंग दीज टू इनटू कंसिडरेशन. अब बताओ कैसे, हाउ, टेल मी. तो इसके लिए तो नेगेटिव है. एंड हाउ इज दिस स्मॉल ट्री इंपैक्टिंग द बिग ट्री? तभी हो ना बिग ट्री एंड स्मॉल ट्री. इफ यू, हम लोग जनरली जब पहली बार आप सोचते हो तो देन यू थिंक यार इसका फायदा इसको हो रहा है, बट देन ऑफ कोर्स इट्स अ बिग ट्री. व्हाट इज द इन्फ्लुएंस ऑफ स्मॉल ट्री ऑन द बिग ट्री? इट्स नॉट. ओके, सो इससे दिस इज जीरो, दिस इज नेगेटिव. Okay, so here you are just writing this big tree and a small tree. The third that you have to write is allelopathy. Third example is allelopathy. ठीक है? Now what happens in this allelopathy? देखो, let's say you have a basic plant, okay, a unique kind of a plant we have. So what it will do, it can secrete certain chemicals, okay. Now these chemicals जो secrete करेगा predominantly they will be negative. In some rare cases, by the way, it can also be positive. What is the negative? So negative क्या होगा? इसकी वजह से the growth is going to be impacted. Okay, the growth of the nearby crop species etc. is going to be impacted. Okay, and they will ultimately die. क्योंकि डायरेक्टली एक केमिकल रिलीज हो रहा है. ओके, सो बिकॉज ऑफ दैट स्टार्टिंग में ग्रोथ स्टंट होगी एंड अल्टीमेटली इट विल लीड टू किलिंग ऑफ द नियर बाय स्पीशीज एक्सेट्रा. ओके, विच इज अगेन अ क्रॉप, राइट. तो उससे क्या होगा? इट इज देन एबल टू सेव इटसेल्फ, इट इज गोइंग टू ग्रो फास्टर, सो इट इज गोइंग टू हैव this impact on this, right? So what is happening here? There is a release of chemicals. Okay, because of the release of chemicals, direct impact हो रहा है दूसरे crop species पे. Okay, so there is a direct negative impact on the crop species, but that crop species का कोई impact इस पे नहीं हो पाएगा ऐसे. Okay, so that is the example of allelopathy. So you would just write down allelopathy is the process of release of allelochemicals. Allelopathy is the process of release of allelochemicals which can have both a negative as well as a positive impact. What did we write अभी लास्ट में?
Which can have both a negative
हाँ,
as well as a positive.
अब इसमें however it is the negative impact that is the most prominent. However, it is the negative impact that is the most prominent. नेक्स्ट पॉइंट इसी में इसको एक्सप्लेन करते हुए विल राइट एग्जाम्पल लिखो, एक लिखो ब्लैक वॉलनट ट्री. इसी में एग्जाम्पल है ब्लैक वॉलनट ट्री. For example, black walnut tree releases a certain chemical, ठीक है, and you don't have to remember the name of the chemical. It's I think juglone or jugrone करके कुछ नाम होता है इसका. So what this chemical will do? It will inhibit. So you can write the released chemical. I'm giving an example of black walnut, but in general भी आप सोच सकते हो that the released chemical initially inhibits the growth of nearby crop species या crop या plant species and eventually leads to their death. And eventually it leads to their death. Okay, this is one of the most prominent examples. And in your margins please write down mains 2016 there was a direct question on this. तो अब जब बाद में when you revise your notes या कुछ वो question exact यहाँ लिखना. There was a 10 marker that was asked on allelopathy. Direct question था. ठीक है, so when you are slightly comfortable, if you even want, वो question भी practice कर सकते हो. It's a question of 2016. A question on allelopathy was asked. ठीक है. हाँ प्लीज, हाँ नेगेटिव जीरो नहीं, पॉजिटिव आप उस सेंस में सोच रहे हो कि दैट इट इज गोइंग टू बी हेल्पफुल, बट हम सेइंग नेगेटिव फ्रॉम दिस पर्सपेक्टिव, जस्ट लाइक द प्रॉब्लम वी हैड विद बिग ट्री एंड स्मॉल ट्री. It is releasing certain chemicals, that chemical is going to inhibit the growth of the other, but because of this species interaction A और B की बात हो रही है, can this impact this? अभी नहीं, वो इसके लिए तो फायदा होगा ही in the future. In the same manner, for example, if there is a big tree, by being the big tree, of course, it is going to get all the benefit. But in species interaction, we are only talking about A and B. What is A doing with respect to B and what is B doing with respect to A? If A is very rich, yeah, wealthy, in this case very powerful, वो अपना स्टैंड अलोन, दैट इज डिफरेंट. बट 0 और 1 ये जो है, दिस वी हैव टू सी एग्जांपल स्पेसिफिक. ठीक है, ओके. अब व्हाट वी विल डू बिफोर वी गो टू द नेक्स्ट सेक्शन, सो वी हैव सीन 6 बेसिक इंटरैक्शंस. ओके, अब यहां पे फिर से वी विल ट्राई टू बी वेरी इंटरैक्टिव. सो इन द नेक्स्ट 2 or 3 minutes, एवरीथिंग दैट वी हैव डन अलोंग विद द एग्जांपल्स वी विल क्विकली रिवाइज. ओके, चलो आप म्यूचुअलिज्म बोल रहे हो तो फिर म्यूचुअलिज्म से स्टार्ट नहीं करते हैं. ठीक है, सो लेट्स स्टार्ट विद कंपटीशन. ओके, tell me what is Gauss exclusion principle? कहते तो पढ़ा ही नहीं, आपने लिखवाया भी नहीं है. चलो ठीक है, अगर if there is an issue I'll make you write this down also. चलो, what is competition? What is the code for competition?
Minus.
Can it be plus minus? No? Okay.
It can be.
कैसे?
If the dominant species, but then it would be.
नहीं, सिंपल रखो, माइनस माइनस. ओके, इसलिए आई गिव यू द एग्जांपल ऑफ इवन वॉर्स आल्सो. सो इवन इफ यू थिंक अ कंट्री इज वेरी रिच एंड पावरफुल, इट विल आल्सो हैव सम नेगेटिव. ओके, कंपटीशन वाज माइनस माइनस. वी आल्सो अंडरस्टूड अ कांसेप्ट नोन एज रिसोर्स पार्टीशनिंग. ठीक है, अभी आफ्टर दीस 2 minutes आई विल आल्सो मेक यू राइट डाउन देयर इज अ गॉस एक्सक्लूजन लॉ एंड देयर इज अ रिसोर्स पार्टीशनिंग जो हमने देखा हुआ है. ठीक है, तो इन कंपटीशन देयर इज नथिंग मच टू रीड अबाउट. सेकंड, लेट्स से आई आस्क यू प्रेडेशन. व्हाट इज द कोड? Plus minus. Okay, give me any example of predation.
And land.
ठीक है, can I say land to be a keystone species?
Yes, sir. Yes.
So what is a giraffe? It is a frugivore, herbivore या carnivore या omnivore?
Herbivore. Giraffe.
हाँ, giraffe.
Herbivore.
ठीक है. What is frugivore? Fruits खाते हैं. Very good. And what is a carnivore? Meat. Omnivore, everything. ठीक है. Now again in the later on, अभी आगे जब देखेंगे the fruit ये सब खाने वाले तो पता चल जाएंगे नाम. ठीक है. Second is what is trophic cascade? तो बस ठीक है. और हमने पढ़ा था again in the case of keystone species. Okay. Let's turn to parasitism. Who all can be a parasite?
Virus, bacteria,
And what cannot be a decomposer? Virus cannot be a decomposer. Okay. Then when we again go back to predation, we have done 3 types of predation. Parasitism: ecto, endo, and brood. What is brood?
Brood, which
Example. Cuckoo. ठीक है. And one was cow bird. Okay. So think of nest. एक वो जाएगा. Ecto outside the body, endo inside the body. ठीक है. So we have seen certain cuscata. We have seen tapeworm, roundworm, bacteria, fungus, and parasites. If bacteria, virus, and fungus, all 3 can be parasites. Okay. Then we move to commensalism. C. Commensalism. What is the code? Plus and 0. We have seen 3 prominent examples. The very first example was suckerfish attaching itself to a shark. ठीक है. Second example was चलो cattle egret भी हो गया. Epiphytes. You tell me what are epiphytes and where are they found? Tropical rainforest. Okay, and these are going to be getting only the support or both support and nutrition? Only the support. ठीक है. So this is, and the third example was अच्छा, cattle egret we've already done. What is the example wherein you have a crocodile opening its teeth and the birds taking the food? That can be mutualism, which then tells me what is obligate mutualism.
What specific species
it is on a very specific.
So a good example is fig and wasp. Obligate means हम तेरे बिन अब रह नहीं सकते. Okay, so it is yes. Okay, you cannot live together. The moment you go out, you will die. One example was fig tree and wasp. Of course, the definition ही यही है. Okay, the obligate mutualism. And the second example was corals. So one example is fig tree and wasp. In fig tree and wasp, what we understood, the case of co-evolution. Very specific vast varieties are there, okay, that will pollinate. It is a specialized case of pollination, okay, and of course it is obligate mutualism, है ना. अब आते हैं लास्ट हमारे म्यूचुअलिज्म पे. म्यूचुअलिज्म पे वी सीन अ लॉट ऑफ एग्जांपल्स, ओके. वो तो मैं अभी चलो हाँ ठीक है, वही बचा हुआ है, ठीक है, पूछ रही है. सो कमिंग बैक टू म्यूचुअलिज्म आएंगे. आई विल कम टू अमेंसालिज्म. म्यूचुअलिज्म में लेट्स सी व्हाट बेसिक एग्जांपल वाज pollination. Another specialized example of pollination, now tell me. Yes, हाँ तो fig tree and wasp. Then और examples बताओ. Coral reefs, very good. Leaf cutter. Leaf cutter कौन होते हैं? इंसान. Ants and fungus, ठीक है. तो leaf cutter are ants, नाम ही है उनका. These are the leaf cutter ants. ठीक है. And fungus. Okay, then other example, mycorrhiza. What is mycorrhiza? ठीक है, okay. It is the symbiotic association of fungus with the roots of higher plants. Okay, that is mycorrhiza. What is the benefit? We have drawn the diagram also. किसको क्या फायदा होता है? How is mycorrhiza benefited?
By getting nutrition.
Nutrition and how is plant benefited?
No, the plant gets the nutrition and they get the protection.
और सोचो.
Benefited by the nutrition and water.
And I mentioned a specific mineral. कौन सा किस में हेल्प करता है? Phosphorus. Okay, ठीक है. Any other example that we've done for mutualism? I think ये करे हैं. अच्छा, lichens. What are lichens? Fungus and algae. ठीक है. Okay, and last coming to Amensalism. Amensalism, what is the code? -0. ठीक है. Give me examples. Number one example was Penicillin में bacteria, you release an antibiotic compound. Okay. Second example was big tree and small tree. And third example was allelopathy. कोई define करना चाहेगा what is allelopathy? Allelochemicals और नहीं तो simple chemicals they are released which can have both a positive and negative impact. ये बहुत safe definition है. But practically speaking, it is mostly negative impact. Okay, which is there on the respective species. Okay, till now is this clear? ठीक है. अब नोट हम करते आ रहे एक. हाँ. Right. हाँ.
तो ये साथ में कहाँ पे exist कर रहे हैं?
साथ में मतलब? Sorry, please. हाँ, please repeat. It is not a mutualism ना? हाँ.
मतलब अगर हम दोनों का रिलेशन है तो I have to be
Around.
हाँ, right.
हाँ.
तो ये दोनों साथ में कहाँ पे?
Bacteria you'll find almost everywhere, right? The air we are breathing is also has bacteria. हाँ, yes, and yes, बिल्कुल simple. हाँ. अच्छा, पॉजिटिव और बहुत रेयर केस है, बट जनरली जो डॉक्यूमेंटेड केस है वो नेगेटिव है, बट इन वेरी रेयर केसेस इट कैन आल्सो बी पॉजिटिव. हाँ, नहीं तो आंसर में उन्होंने जनरली लिखा होगा, डिफाइन किया होगा व्हाट इज एलिलोपैथी. एलिलोपैथी लीड्स टू द नेगेटिव इंपैक्ट्स, बट इन वेरी रेयर केसेस इट कैन आल्सो लीड टू पॉजिटिव इंपैक्ट्स. सो व्हेन वी राइट स्टैंड अलोन एलिलोपैथी, हम क्या करेंगे? वी विल डिफाइन व्हाट इट इज, वी विल टेल द एग्जांपल्स एंड वी विल टेल द इंप्लीकेशंस ऑफ दिस. हाँ, कर सकते हो बिल्कुल, उसमें कोई गलत नहीं है कि दैट इज अमेंसालिज्म. वो तो साइंटिफिकली इट इज सीन व्हेन वी सी माइनस एंड जीरो, व्हेन वी से दैट इज अमेंसालिज्म. ओके, बट इन सम रेयर केसेस इट कैन आल्सो हैव सर्टेन पॉजिटिव इंपैक्ट्स. Again, I am trying to be scientifically correct also. अगर मैं तो directly I can also say negative, but there are certain cases wherein it is positive. But जब वो पढ़ते भी हैं तो भी then we see mostly it is a negative impact. Okay, so that's how it is there. But again, your homework is to write down कि वो question क्या था. ठीक है, जब बाद में देखोगे पढ़ोगे, let's say when you get a day off etc. whenever, तो इसको ऐड कर लेना and then try to think. फंसोगे, let's say your friends try to brainstorm. We'll also try to see what points we can add to this. ठीक है, so that is something we can do. ठीक है. ओके, नाउ गोइंग बैक टू आवर डिस्कशन. अच्छा, एक जस्ट अ स्मॉल नोट, आई थिंक गॉस एक्सक्लूजन लॉ आई हैव नॉट मेड यू राइट डाउन. इसी में जस्ट बिफोर एंडिंग दिस वील राइट इट, बट इट इज एक्चुअली अंडर कॉम्पिटिशन. ठीक है, तो इसमें वी आर गोइंग वन स्टेप बियॉन्ड व्हाट इज मेंशन्ड इन द एनसीईआरटी, उससे एक स्टेप आगे जा रहे हैं. सो The name is GAUSE, Gauss Competitive Exclusion Principle. Gauss Competitive Exclusion Principle. Dash करके two species competing for the same niche and limited resources. Two species competing for same niche and limited resources cannot coexist indefinitely. Same niche and limited resources cannot coexist indefinitely, comma, the semicolon, one will outcompete the other. Cannot coexist indefinitely, मतलब आगे आने वाले सवाल में हमेशा it will not survive. It cannot coexist indefinitely. Okay? One will outcompete the other. ये सेम चीज in very simple terms I have already made you write down कि based on Darwin's law etc. in very simple terms. This is the Gauss competitive exclusion principle. Outcompete, वही तो है सर्वाइवल ऑफ द फिटेस्ट. यहां पे आउट कम्पीट का मतलब ये नहीं कि रेस में आगे भाग गए. इट इज ऑलमोस्ट कि भाई यू आर बाय बाय एक्सटिंक्ट टाटा. हाँ, ये बाय द वे ये प्रिंसिपल व्हाई एम आई मेकिंग यू राइट डाउन. ये गॉस लॉ करके दिया आपके एनसीईआरटी क्लास 12th में. ओके, बट इसका पूरा नाम है द गॉस कॉम्पिटिटिव एक्सक्लूजन प्रिंसिपल. ओके, बट आई ऑल्सो मेड यू राइट डाउन दिस इज नॉट ट्रू. क्यों? उसके फिर से देखो, रिसोर्स पार्टीशनिंग. So a counter to the Gauss competitive exclusion principle is resource partitioning. The image that we saw, remember? हाँ, यानी जो इमेज हमने देखी थी, this is a counter to that. ये चीज हम देख चुके हैं. But again, the technical term that is there, I want you also to know that. फिर आप ये ना सोचो कि Gauss तो हमने पढ़ा ही नहीं है. और resource partitioning में you can write down in response to competitive pressures. In response to competitive pressures, species often evolve to use resources differently. Often evolve to use resources differently. Often evolve to use resources differently, reducing competition and allowing them to coexist. Reducing competition, it often evolve to use resources differently, reducing competition and allowing them to coexist. ठीक है? दोनों चीज समझ के. ओके, तो इफ देयर इज एनी टर्म टर्मिनोलॉजी एग्जांपल दैट इज आस्क्ड, यू वुड ऑलरेडी नो दैट. ठीक है? ओके, now please write down the next heading. इसमें we will just see, this is something we had just spoken about very briefly in the first lecture. We had seen that what are the components. There are biotic components, there are abiotic components. ठीक है? तो अभी we'll just have a look at some major abiotic factors and what is the impact of those factors. अभी से पहले हमने क्या देखा, species जब आपस में interactions कर रहे हैं, what can be the different kinds of interactions. Here we'll simply see, let's say if there is too much of salt content, तो impact क्या होता है. If there is too much of water, too less of water, too much of light, too less of light, high temperature, low temperature. एक बार when you understand this, then even going forward, then you will even understand why is climate change a problem for species. ठीक है? So the main heading will be effect of abiotic factors on plants and animals, और एक एक करके I'll tell you for each abiotic factor. So main heading you will write down. So now we are going to the next section, effect of abiotic factors on plants and animals. Effect of abiotic factors on plants and animals. Okay. अब यहां पे भी we will just use our basic knowledge. ठीक है. From that, for example, what is the impact on plant? What is the impact on animal? And when you understand this, इसके बाद का जो section है, where I talk about species adaptations, which is same part but slightly more advanced, this will make a lot of sense to you. Okay. One example that we already saw, remember penguins in the first class. Penguins क्या करते हैं? They use huddles. Okay. And that also helps them. But why are they doing it? सोचो temperature. Temperature, if it is too less, that's also a behavior. To understand species behavior, you have to understand this particular fact. एक एक करके, ठीक है? Is this part clear? Okay. So यहाँ पे एक एक करके now basic जो भी point बोलेंगे, very short notes you will make. Okay. And for this also I'll give you examples for each of the cases, right? So you will have enough content to write down. Okay. तो यहाँ पे पहला लिखो सबसे पहले लाइट. वील स्टार्ट विद लाइट. और इन योर माइंड, ऑफ कोर्स आई विल गिव यू अ शॉर्ट राइट अप, बट यू शुड बी एबल टू स्नैप. लाइट मतलब बस ये याद रखो, फोटोसिंथेसिस. ठीक है. फॉर ईच ऑफ देम एक कुछ आपको आई विल हेल्प यू विद विजुअल मेमोरी ऑल्सो, कि मैं बस कीवर्ड बोलूं आपको चीज याद आ जाए. अब जैसे मैं लाइट बोलता हूं, और इफ यू स्ट्राइक फोटोसिंथेसिस, सो व्हेन वी सी द रिएक्शन in the process of photosynthesis, availability of sunlight is very important. Without that तो हो ही नहीं सकता process. So for plant you also understand it's very important. Okay. Plants are what? Producers. Yes. If plants, in fact जो पूरी life चल रही है, it is basically because the plants are able to make their own food, and this is sustaining the entire food chain, because these are the main component. From them the herbivores to carnivores, apex predator, that is how the flow of energy is. Okay. That is why light is very crucial. Okay. So in light just one line we'll write. पहला पॉइंट है, और इसमें आई विल मेक, देखो मैंने क्या बोला, प्लांट्स और एनिमल्स, तो हर एक पॉइंट पे इंपैक्ट प्लांट पे क्या है और एनिमल्स पे क्या है. ओके. सो पहला पॉइंट इज इंपैक्ट ऑन प्लांट्स, और आगे से क्या लिखोगे आप, सिर्फ प्लांट्स डैश, सो यू विल अंडरस्टैंड इट इज द इंपैक्ट ऑन प्लांट्स. ओके. सो फॉर लाइट वी विल राइट द इंपैक्ट ऑन प्लांट्स. yes, that's a fair point. Small surface area वाला, though again we'll also see this in more detail. हाँ, अभी जो पॉइंट हम लिख रहे हैं, दैट इज लाइट इज अ क्रिटिकल फैक्टर फॉर फोटोसिंथेसिस. लाइट इज अ क्रिटिकल फैक्टर फॉर फोटोसिंथेसिस, ग्रोथ एंड फ्लावरिंग. फुल स्टॉप. इट इन्फ्लुएंसेस हाउ एंड वेयर प्लांट्स ग्रो. How and where plants grow. Okay. अब देखो, सिर्फ इतनी अगर नॉलेज है आपको, एंड लेट्स लिंक दिस टू क्लाइमेट चेंज. ओके. नाउ बिकॉज ऑफ एक्सट्रीम्स ऑफ टेम्परेचर, ओके, लाइट जो है वो भी वेरी कर रही है. ओके. एंड बिकॉज ऑफ दैट व्हाट इज हैपनिंग, मैंने बोला ना, दिस विल इन्फ्लुएंस द फ्लावरिंग, द ग्रोथ. दिस इज गेटिंग इंपैक्टेड. So in some cases what is happening, some seasons are getting preponed. Second, कहीं भी seasons बहुत लंबे चल रहे हैं. So if I give you one example, there is something known as rhododendron. Okay, this is again one of the state flowers of Himachal. Rhododendron बहुत अच्छी image है, you can Google it later on. नाम है ये rhododendrons. By the way, आपकी क्लास 7th की NCERT में भी इसकी इमेज है, rhododendrons. So again your objective has to be just see the image, just learn about it. But my point is, because of climate change, this is again one example, very in the running notes you can write, it is having or it is seeing early flowering. तो अभी से देखो, जो भी हम क्लास फर्स्ट से पॉइंट्स देख रहे हैं, and when you ultimately write your answers, right, all these small की species, उसके attributes, when you write in your answers, you will get very good marks based on this. So for example, you can say that because of climate change, okay, हाँ इसी में चल रहा है अभी, हाँ, there is an early flowering of rhododendrons that is seen. Early flowering of rhododendrons. दूसरी चीज इसको समझने के लिए एक और है, you know what is sunflower?
Yes, sir.
सूरजमुखी. So again, if the region is already getting a lot of sunlight, so where do you want to have a sunflower? In shade or in open light?
Open light.
Open light. But there are certain varieties which prefer shade. So this knowledge is also important for us. Okay. So light will play a very crucial factor in this. ये आप समझ रहे हो? ठीक है? तो here, if you want to write as an example, इसको लिख सकते हो. You can write down sun-loving plants like sunflower grow best in open, sunny areas. Sun-loving plants like sunflowers grow best in open, sunny areas. अब इसमें just a homework I want you to just, अब homework भी क्या है, this is again to make you more curious. How is the sun plant, does it always face the sun?
Yes. It is only-
But ऐसा क्यों है? Is there a mechanism कि why is it always facing the sun? तो वो मूव कैसे करता है, क्या करता है, क्यों करता है? Think about the science of it. कुछ तो मैकेनिज्म होगी, सारे पेड़ तो नहीं करते,
It's something related to rays.
पर ठीक है, just try to see. ठीक है? And other example you can write down, shade tolerant plants like ferns. Ferns be in the coming lectures, we'll talk about them many a times. Shade tolerant plants like ferns thrive or grow better in low light conditions. They thrive better in low light conditions. सॉरी, हाँ, अच्छा, फर्न्स के बाद हम थे कहां पे?
Thrive and
हाँ.
better in low light.
हाँ, they thrive in low light conditions, that's it. They thrive in low light conditions. नहीं, फर्न इज डिफरेंट, बट जो आप कह रहे हो विच आर देयर स्पेसिफिकली, तो अगेन दैट दोज आर, जैसे मनी प्लांट हो गए जो इंडोर एयर प्लांट्स हैं, सो दे आर स्लाइटली डिफरेंट. ऑफ कोर्स दे डोंट रिक्वायर डायरेक्ट सनलाइट आल्सो, तो यू कैन आल्सो से दैट कैन आल्सो बी वन ऑफ द एग्जांपल्स. दिस इज द इंपैक्ट ऑन प्लांट्स. ठीक है, अभी फोटोसिंथेसिस भी इन द कमिंग पार्ट्स आई विल आल्सो टेल यू. तो फोटोसिंथेसिस पे कहीं पे स्टार मार्क लगा के रखना. Then I'll also tell you the UV spectral quality and what is photosynthetically active radiation. Two things I have to tell you, but I'll tell you later on. दो concepts हैं, एक है PAR, but now is not the right time. In the coming times I'll tell you where this is important, वो देखेंगे. Second, इसमें आएगा animals. अभी हमने plants पे impact देखा. Second, please write down on animals. अब देखो, जो सनलाइट है, द अवेलेबिलिटी ऑफ सनलाइट, जस्ट राइट डाउन, इट्स टोटली सेल्फ एक्सप्लेनेटरी. द सनलाइट इफेक्ट्स एनिमल बिहेवियर्स लाइक, it affects animal behaviors like migration, reproduction, and daily activity. And in daily activity, in the bracket you can write down, these are also important terms. Daily activity like nocturnal, diurnal, okay, nocturnal. अच्छा रुक जाओ, this spelling is not right. Crepuscular, nocturnal, diurnal and crepuscular. बता रहा हूँ ऐसा थोड़ी ना बम. So what did we write? What was the line? It affects migration,
and daily activity.
reproduction, daily activities. अब देखो, what is nocturnal? जो रात में जागते हैं. Can anybody identify with this statement? Owls की बात नहीं कर रहा हूं मैं, आपकी भी बात कर रहा था. So of course they are active during the night time, right? Very good example. Owls, yes. What is diurnal? Active during the day. जैसे अभी right now we are talking, we can say that we are diurnal. You may also say no sir, this is only your illusion. It is not like that. So these are active during day. What are crepuscular? Yes. So basically, yes. So when we talk about deers, etc., in that small time during the, let's say, twilight, etc., they are more active. Okay. तो इसी चीज को, till where did you write it? You've written these three terms.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So now please write down example. Nocturnal animals like owls. Nocturnal animals like owls have adapted to hunt in low light conditions. Like owls have adapted to hunt in low light conditions. Then many birds such as swallows, many birds such as swallows have adapted to daylight. They have adapted to daylight to begin migration. So that means it helps them. And the third one, crepuscular, इसको लिखो डैश करके, क्योंकि ये दोनों टर्म सबको पता होते हैं, डायरनल एंड नॉक्टर्नल. दिस मे बी अ न्यू टर्म फॉर सम ऑफ यू. तो crepuscular we'll write down. They are primarily active during twilight. They are primarily active during twilight. Dash करके, which includes dawn and dusk. Which helps them, or which includes dawn. अच्छा देखो, dawn ये है, and dusk. And why are they doing this? इसके लिए लिखो एक लाइन. This helps them avoid intense heat of the midday. This helps them avoid intense heat of the midday and complete darkness of the night. Okay, full stop. It allows them to evade predators. It allows them to evade predators or locate better prey. Or locate better prey. ठीक है. अब just want to ask from you, do you know these terms? Twilight किसी को पता है? What is twilight?
The time when
Twilight movie नहीं, Twilight. हाँ, पक्का?
नहीं, जब
इवनिंग एंड आफ्टरनून नहीं. हाँ, और कुछ सोचो.
नहीं, between the time of evening and night.
Between the time of darkness and
चलो ठीक है. अब देखो उससे पूछो, जब अपना सन आता है, देखो देयर इज अ बेसिक होराइजन. सो व्हेन द सन इज अबव द होराइजन, तो एक होगा सनराइज. सन, लेट्स से द सन इज बिलो, सम टाइम लेटर इट विल जस्ट बी अबव द होराइजन, देन यू हैव अ सनराइज. ओके, इस टाइम को भी बोलते हैं ट्वाइलाइट. देन द टाइम व्हेन द सन इज अबाउट टू सेट, ठीक है, सन धीमे धीमे जाएगा, एग्जैक्टली डिसअपियर तो नहीं होता. इवन देन you have a small time, that is also known as twilight. Okay, इसी चीज को you also known as dawn. is during sunrise and dusk is during sunset. ठीक है, तो if you want to write down एक लाइन लिख लो इस पे twilight, क्योंकि बिना knowledge of twilight the knowledge of crepuscular is not going to be there. Twilight, write down, it's a period of soft diffused light. It's not direct, it's a period of soft diffused light, soft diffused light that occurs when the sun is just below the horizon. Diffused light, soft diffused light when the sun is just below the horizon. और ब्रैकेट में लिखो दोनों केस हैं, आइदर बिफोर द सनराइज और आफ्टर द सनसेट. हाँ, बिफोर द सनराइज, देखो इसको समझ लो ये ऐसे, लेट्स से दिस इज द टाइम ऑफ सनराइज, यहां पे बिफोर द सन इज रिजन, अगर सन यहां पे आ गया देन तो सन वी ऑलरेडी आर सीइंग, बट इवन बिफोर दैट देयर इज अ डिफ्यूज सनलाइट. ओके, so this is let's say during the sunrise and even after the sunset, when the sun is set, so yahan pe when you see the sun, okay, this is included both. So again I'll repeat this point, soft diffused light that occurs when the sun is just below the horizon. तो अपने लिए अपने दिमाग में सोचो, there is a horizon line just before, if sun is above this you will get proper sunlight. okay, तो यहां पे ये इस समय है और हमने क्या लिखा, they want to escape the very harsh light. So that is why they are active during these times. Okay, so below the horizon either before the sunset or after the sunset. ठीक है, just examples also write down. So here generally we'll see deer, D-E-E-R, deer, rabbits, hare, H-A-R-E. अब देयर कैन बी सर्टेन एक्सेप्शंस इन डियर ऑल्सो, सो अभी मैं अम्ब्रेला टर्म बोल रहा हूं. ओके, सो जनरली वी सी डियर्स टू बी वेरी एक्टिव इन दिस केस. ओके, रैबिट हो सकते हैं, हेयर हो सकते हैं. ओके, देन वी कैन ऑल्सो मेंशन फायर फ्लाइज, जुगनू, फायर फ्लाइज आर जुगनू. आगे हम ये भी देखेंगे कि हाउ दे ग्लो, व्हाट मेक्स देम ग्लो. जो ग्लो करता है दैट इज नोन एज बायोल्यूमिनेसेंस. That is the kind of glow that is there. Okay, so these are some examples that you can write. Is this fine also for the people online? आपने लिखा इसको, एक लास्ट एग्जाम्पल लिख सकते हो, रेड फॉक्स, रेड फॉक्स. सो ऑल दिस यू कैन नोट डाउन. ठीक है, रेड फॉक्स. तो अभी दिस इज द ओनली वन पार्ट दैट वी हैव डन. ए बायोटिक में पहली चीज क्या देखी है, लाइट. अब बताओ, लाइट इज इंपॉर्टेंट फॉर प्लांट और नॉट? वाई एंड ग्रोथ एंड फ्लावरिंग. कौन सा एग्जांपल देखा हमने इसमें, रोडोडेंड्रॉन्स. रोडोडेंड्रॉन्स कजाकिस्तान में मिलते हैं, अफगानिस्तान में, कहां पे?
हिमाचल प्रदेश.
चलो ठीक है. दूसरा क्या देखा हमने, in case of animals with three types देखे. Of course in animals we already know migration, reproduction and their day-to-day functions. You can have nocturnal, you can have diurnal and you can have cryptocurrency. That is what you want to say, crepuscular. इतना आसान नहीं है, it also took me some time to. हाँ, and what is crepuscular? Twilight. And what is twilight?
The time before
ठीक है, होराइजन से जस्ट पहले, बिफोर सनराइज एंड इवन आफ्टर सनसेट. ठीक है, उल्टा मत कर देना कि आफ्टर एंड यहां बिफोर कर दो. हाँ, तो वो दैट इज गोइंग टू बी देयर. सेकंड प्लीज राइट डाउन इज वाटर. ओके, एंड इसमें हर एक चीज आराम से, वेरी सिंपल टू अंडरस्टैंड. अब मुझे बताओ, इज वाटर नेसेसरी फॉर प्लांट्स, फॉर एनिमल्स? ऑफ कोर्स वेरी नेसेसरी. व्हाई? बिकॉज even for plants etc, their cell is made up of 70% water. So if it is very cold condition, वो freeze हो जाएगा. Human body is made up of almost 60-70% water. Okay, so that is why water is very important. So water में लिखेंगे. For plants लिखो plants करके. Now we have this habit. Plants में dash. Essential for photosynthesis. Photosynthesis के लिए कोड वर्ड बना लो, नहीं तो बहुत बार you have to write this long term. Important for photosynthesis. Nutrient transport and structural support. Nutrient transport and structural support. Now for example, if we have a lot of water available, तो growth अच्छी होती है plants की, but water when that is not available and the plants have to survive, what kinds of plant do you find in desert? Cactus. But cactus normal plant से तो बहुत अलग दिखता है ना? So it means when there is a change in the resource that is available, the plants or the animals can adapt. So normal animals that you find in plains versus the animal that you find in deserts are different. Okay, is this clear? तो इसमें example लिखो. You can write an example. Cactus in deserts have thick, fleshy stem. Cactus in deserts have thick, fleshy stem to store water and minimize water loss. The thick, fleshy stem stores water and they have to minimize the water loss. Minimize water loss. ठीक है. Second, come to plants, sorry, animals. Animals में here we'll write water availability affects habitat choice. Habitat choice. Availability affects habitat choice. Hydration and thermoregulation. Thermoregulation. Thermoregulation, I'll tell you in very simple terms. Right now it is cold. ठीक है? So what do we do as humans when it is very cold? We shiver. Shiver to produce heat. What happens when it is very warm? We perspire. We sweat a lot. But imagine if there is a species, if it is very hot and they cannot afford to lose a lot of water. Okay? So here also the availability of water is also going to determine certain attributes. इसीलिए when you talk about, let's say, camels can drink and store a lot of water in their belly. You would have heard stories कि किस तरह से camel को मारा and then taking out all the water and drinking it, etc. Camels can hold and store a lot of water, just for reference. Okay, so here again availability of water. So naturally the animals would want to go to a place where they have a lot of water. Suppose they don't have enough water, camels, etc., they have different adaptations to deal with this. Okay, so here just write down one example. Kangaroo rats in deserts rarely drink water. Kangaroo rats in deserts rarely drink water. By the way, kangaroo rat का भी example और cactus दोनों are also there in the NCERT, also in a particular chapter. So we are covering all these examples. In deserts, they rarely drink water. Okay, full stop. Their kidneys are adapted. Their kidneys are adapted to concentrate urine. Their kidneys are adapted to concentrate urine. To minimize water loss. ठीक है. अब अगर मिनिमाइज करना है वाटर लॉस, आई हैव टोल्ड यू अबाउट एनिमल्स. व्हाट रेगुलेट्स द वाटर रिलेटेड एट्रीब्यूट्स इन प्लांट्स? हाउ डू प्लांट्स रेगुलेट द वाटर इनटेक आउटटेक? कैसे करते हैं? और कुछ सोचो. और कुछ? स्टोमेटा. ठीक है. सो स्टोमेटा की ओपनिंग एंड क्लोजिंग, ओके, it is going to determine how much water is going to be released. This process is, by the way, known as evapotranspiration. किसी भी plant के लिए it is very important to conserve water. Otherwise, the plant may not be able to survive. Okay, so this is equally important for plant, just like it is for animals. Okay, so here you will write for plants also. इसी में लिख लो साथ में. Plants regulate the opening and closing of stomata. Any part that you people have missed out in the online, just let me know. I'll repeat. And also the MCQ drive for the lecture 3 has also been shared with you. Okay. So what we were discussing, अभी क्या कर रहे थे हम?
Plants regulate the opening.
हाँ, they regulate the opening to reduce evapotranspiration loss. This term is made from two words. One is evaporation and one is transpiration. So we say evapotranspiration. Okay, so they will regulate the opening and closing of stomata to reduce evapotranspiration loss. ये अगर एक चीज आपको पता चल गई तो आगे when you even talk about mangroves, all the different plants variety, ultimately they are designed in this manner to save the water. So it is equally true for plants, it's also true for animals. Okay, ये पार्ट ठीक है. नेक्स्ट प्लीज राइट डाउन टेम्परेचर. और एक चीज है देखो, लाइट डिफरेंट है, टेम्परेचर अलग है. आर यू एबल टू अंडरस्टैंड द डिफरेंस बिटवीन लाइट एंड टेम्परेचर? यू टेल मी व्हाट इज द डिफरेंस. ठीक है. एंड व्हाट इज लाइट? लाइट इज लाइट. हाँ हाँ ठीक है. एंड देखो उसमें भी राइट राइट देन अगेन यस, presence of clouds. Okay, whereas light में भी बहुत factors है, like you also said that it is the spectral या जो solar rays की incoming quality है. Okay, which is, and इसलिए we cover both of them separately, that you have light important for photosynthesis, again the visible spectrum, but heat is related to temperature part, right? So now for temperature you will write okay, so here you can write down temperature affects the rate of photosynthesis. It affects the rate of photosynthesis and germination of seeds. Germination of seed. हाँ plants पे Okay, talking of temperatures, you would have heard maybe something like there are evergreen trees and there are deciduous trees. सुना है ऐसा? Now deciduous trees are trees who will shed their leaves in a specific season. Evergreen trees don't have a specific season, they will shed leaves throughout the year. इसलिए नाम है evergreen. हमेशा कुछ कुछ समय में they will keep on shedding the leaves. But deciduous, they will shed the leaves. Why am I telling you this? Now we are talking of temperature. Of course, अगर हम बात करते हैं मॉनसून से पहले, okay, so you have hot intense summers. In this time, this is very, let's say, harsh weather. It is during this time that they shed the leaves, so that later on when the monsoon comes, when they have enough, let's say, rain available, then the seeds can germinate, etc. So based on the temperature also, that is the point I said, the germination, the fall of leaf is going to be determined. ये समझ में आ रहा है? ठीक है. तो in the margins you just write down, सिर्फ ये याद रखो, difference between evergreen and deciduous. I'm not making you write that down. ठीक है. अगर नहीं समझ में आया, you can again ask me, but I just told you that of course temperature is also going to determine when the leaf fall would happen. So the difference between evergreen, let's say जिसको नहीं पता है, deciduous की ये spelling है evergreen and deciduous. This is just one example, right? Another example can be, let's say, if there is too much of heat, okay, so then also the plants can have certain diseases also, and the crop also can get destroyed. The concept that you need to know is the difference between evergreen and deciduous. Okay, in case of animals you can write extreme temperatures can limit animals range मतलब where they are found. Extreme temperature can limit animals range, comma metabolic rates and influence and influence behaviors. You know what is metabolism? Let's say you would have seen, you say to a friend, let's say, who eats a lot but is very thin, so you say you have a very good metabolism. Okay, so it is again all the process, and then there may be somebody jo ek choti si bite loge, but then you will see directly that coming up, so you may say that you don't have that fast a metabolism. This is again just a very simple way to understand. Okay, so metabolism, the plants will also have, the animals will also have. So whatever intake they have, how quickly they regulate the nutrients within that. Okay, तो अगर टेम्परेचर बहुत ज्यादा है तो मेटाबॉलिक एक्टिविटीज ऑफ एनिमल्स विल आल्सो गेट इफेक्टेड. ओके, सो बिकॉज लेट्स से अवेलेबिलिटी ऑफ वाटर इज नॉट देयर, then even the internal processes will also be impacted, the release of hormones, how quickly they are digesting the food, etc, etc. So this is related to this part here. Okay, here please write down an example. If I'm talking of temperatures, we'll write down an example of polar bears. Polar bears are adapted to cold temperatures. Polar bears are adapted to cold temperatures with thick fur, FUR, thick fur, and a layer of fat. Why is this? Warm, right? For example, abhi when there'll be more winters in Delhi, you will come with your shawls, mufflers, jackets, right? So that is what, again think of this as furs. They naturally have it, they don't have to buy it from Monte Carlo, let's say. Okay? And then next is thick layer of fat. Okay, fat also helps. Okay, and another example I'll give you. So one is in extreme cold, in extreme heat you can write, while desert animals like camel. एक हमने लिखा example polar bear, इसी point में where while desert animals like camel have adapted to survive in, they have adapted to survive in hot, arid, 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 hot, arid environments. ठीक है? That is the part related to temperature, right? Next, please write down soil. Soil and pH we will have as separate points. पहले soil को लिखेंगे, ठीक है? तो heading है soil and mineral nutrients. This is the entire heading. Soil and mineral nutrients. तो पहला point for plants we'll write, it influences plant growth. It influences plant growth, root uptake या फिर root development, plant growth, root development and nutrient uptake. And nutrient uptake. ठीक है? ओके, अब देखो इसमें बिकॉज आई एम टॉकिंग ऑफ मिनरल न्यूट्रिएंट्स आल्सो, आई टेल यू, आपने कभी इंसेक्टिवोरस प्लांट सुने हैं?
Yes, sir.
देखे होंगे, से रिमेंबर सम ऑफ द कार्टून्स, देयर वाज अ वीनस फ्लाई ट्रैप. ओके, सो इट इज यस पिच अ प्लांट दे यूज्ड टू डायरेक्टली टेक अप. ठीक है, ऐसा वो क्यों करता था, ये सोचो. व्हाई वाज इट ईटिंग द इंसेक्ट्स? गुड पॉइंट, वेरी गुड पॉइंट. किसको? नहीं नहीं, वो अलग है, वो अलग है, वो देखेंगे आगे. नाइट्रोजन फिक्सिंग बैक्टीरिया का एग्जांपल हो सकता है जैसे राइजोबियम. दैट इज व्हाट हैपेंस इन दीज रीजन्स, दैट दीज रीजन्स आर हैविंग वेरी पुअर न्यूट्रिएंट अवेलेबिलिटी वेयर यू हैव इंसेक्टिवोरस प्लांट्स. सो दे हैव अडैप्टेड देमसेल्व्स टू कैच, लेट्स से वीनस फ्लाई ट्रैप इन सब में इंसेक्ट्स. सो फ्रॉम दैट दे विल गेट द न्यूट्रिएंट्स. ओके, लाइट अवेलेबिलिटी भी कम है, बट उससे ज्यादा मेन इशू है अवेलेबिलिटी ऑफ न्यूट्रिएंट नहीं है. So to get adequate resources to grow, they have these mechanisms. Whereas if you compare it with already a loamy soil जहां पे अच्छे खासे nutrient है, you will find in the normal plants. Is this clear? तो लो न्यूट्रिएंट अवेलेबिलिटी पे अब ये याद रखो एग्जांपल ऑफ दीज कार्निवोरस और लेट्स से इंसेक्टिवोरस प्लांट्स. ओके, सो हियर जस्ट वन एग्जांपल यू कैन राइट. In nutrient poor soils, in nutrient poor soils, carnivorous plants, in nutrient poor soils, carnivorous plants like Venus flytrap, Venus flytraps. This is just one example. अब इसमें your homework should also be to add in the margins 2-3 more examples. Okay, very prominent, सबसे famous वाले. Okay, you can add that. So we are saying carnivorous plants like the Venus flytraps supplement their nutrition. They supplement their nutrition by capturing insects. They supplement their nutrition by capturing insect. तो अब से जब भी आप सोचोगे about these carnivorous plants, automatically what comes to mind? Low nutrient soil. So I'm not giving you an example of already decent nutrient. वहां पे तो already अच्छे plants मिलते हैं. But in a low nutrient soil, you will find insectivorous. So this is something unique. Okay. Then, sorry, by capturing insects. By capturing insects. प्लांट्स हो गया. नेक्स्ट आओ इसमें एनिमल्स में. अब देखो डायरेक्टली तो न्यूट्रिएंट अपटेक इज गोइंग टू इंपैक्ट द प्लांट्स. ओके, इट इज गोइंग टू इंपैक्ट द ग्रोथ ऑफ प्लांट्स. हु इज मोस्ट डिपेंडेंट ऑन प्लांट्स? लाइक विच एनिमल्स? आप बताओ. हाँ, कौन? विच वन इज वेरी गुड? हर्बीवोर्स. Omnivores, बिल्कुल सही. It is, yes. So they are indirectly dependent. So if there is a decline in the nutrient uptake, अगर हो रहा है problem in the nutrient availability, the plants will not grow properly, and these herbivores would not have food. But then it will impact the carnivores because they have to eat the herbivores. Okay, so they will even say, "अरे कुछ खा के तो आओ, then only I'll be able to eat you." Okay, so here you can write this as. Here directly example लिख रहे हैं हम animals में. Okay, because you can write that it indirectly affects herbivores. It indirectly affects herbivores and subsequently affects predators. This also tells you that there is a food chain. It indirectly affects herbivores predators. अब इसका बहुत अच्छा एग्जांपल मैं आपको बताता हूं. फॉर एग्जांपल वी से अफ्रीकन सवानाज. हाँ, बोलो बोलो आप. Subsequently affects predators because predators will eat the herbivores. Okay, अब जैसे फॉर एग्जांपल if you have seen a lot of movies etc. Africa, savannas etc. they have a lot of biodiversity. Okay, I can say the same for Amazon also. Huge biodiversity is there. अब इसको if we break it down from soil perspective, okay, so in some of these regions there are a lot of herbivores. If there are a lot of herbivores, it means grass has to be there. Okay, if there are herbivores also, then good amount of tiger, lion population will also be there. Okay, so then there is a continuation. Okay, so here what you can write, simple as a point. In mineral rich African savannas, in mineral rich African savannas, हमने देखा था elephants in African savannas. Remember, ecosystem engineers. Okay, you can write nutrient dense grasses. Nutrient dense grasses support. The nutrient dense grasses, they support large population of herbivores. मतलब इसको सिंपल सोचो यार, अच्छी खासी there is a lot of grasses available. Grasses will support herbivores. Herbivores will support carnivores. So they support large population of herbivores, bracket, zebras, which in turn supports predators like lions, which in turn support predators like lions. ठीक है? Yes, right. ठीक है, किस पे? नहीं नहीं, पर देखो इसमें देखो दो चीजें हो गई. वी हैव ऑल्टर्ड द इकोसिस्टम टू क्रिएट एग्रीकल्चर. एग्रीकल्चर वाज टू क्रिएट एन एग्रीकल्चर लैंड. व्हाट यू हैव टू डू, टू कट डाउन ऑल द ट्रीज. अब इसका इकोसिस्टम इंपैक्ट सोचो आप. सो द एग्रीकल्चर लैंड इज नेवर अ नेचुरल इकोसिस्टम. Rice fields, all these fields are man-made created ecosystem purely for economic gain. अब जैसे आगे भी, for example, if have you heard about green revolution in India?
Yes.
Food sufficiency हुई उसकी वजह से. But the problem is that green revolution also led to a lot of ecological harm, depletion of groundwater. It led to excessive use of high yielding varieties, pesticides, etc. तो उसकी वजह से soil quality deteriorate हुई. A lot of subsidies were given to the farmers electricity, so they used consistently, तो groundwater पूरा deplete हुआ. Leaching of chemicals also happened. तो you already know, हमने बोला ही था सर, most dangerous species कौन है? ठीक है, okay, that is with soil and mineral. Okay, next is pH. In fact, in the first class I think you already told कि दोनों को अलग क्यों करा है. Why are we treating pH and soil differently? Okay, so now even again this will make your doubt more clearer. This is the fifth one, right? We are not talking of pH levels. pH yala pH ye. Okay, so pH simple hai, acidic, basic, alkaline, right? So in case of plants you can write down soil pH affects nutrient availability. Soil pH affects nutrient availability, full stop. Plants generally prefer neutral to slightly acidic soils. Plants generally prefer neutral to slightly acidic soils. Now, can you tell me what is neutral as per as pH? 7 is neutral. What is slightly acidic? 8 or 6? 6. ये हाँ, acidic. 6. देखो, we get confused here. See, this 7 is neutral. When the pH reduces 6, 5, this is acidic. 8, 9, this is alkaline. ठीक है? So what did we say? Neutral to slightly acidic. That is what the plant prefers. Okay? इसमें एग्जाम्पल लिख सकते हो. Pine trees, P-I-N-E. अब जैसे पाइन ट्रीज हमें जो भी कॉनिफरस फॉरेस्ट हैं वहां मिलते हैं पाइन ट्रीज. ओके, कॉनिफरस, these are actually needle shaped. I'll tell you this in more later. Trees pe we will have a lecture. So we are just writing right now an example that pine trees, by the way, pine trees prefer acidic soils. Pine trees prefer acidic soils. Whereas legumes can tolerate alkaline soils. Alkaline soils. No, Ishak, this is actually the part of GS Foundation program. Samba program is separate, that is related to the prelims. It's a prelims umbrella program, right? Now coming back to this, anybody can give me an idea, have you ever heard of this term legumes? नहीं सुनाओ तो चलो, what is the thing that you like to eat यहाँ पे, let's say in Delhi, जो चीज बहुत पसंद है खाने में? चलो, छोले भटूरे. चलो, so you know the छोले, this is generally what? Sorry, क्या? अच्छा, छोले is gram. Okay, so this is again an example of legumes. Okay, the grams, you can have different white gram, black gram, etc. Legumes are nitrogen fixing. Okay, later on we'll also read about them, but again बहुत बार क्या है, जैसे legumes से अब आपको सीधे, if you remember छोले भटूरे, because bhatures are not legumes, we are only talking of chole specifically, which is gram. Okay, pulses, yes, good example, pulses etc. So these are the examples of legumes. Legumes are nitrogen fixing. Okay, अभी के लिए सिर्फ legumes या जो भी याद आ रहा है साथ में legumes जरूर लिखना. हाँ, मैं यही सुनना चाह रहा था भाई. हाँ, आपने एक बार पहली बार में बोल दिया, तो that is good.
Yeah.
For legumes, the example I wanted to hear, so that makes my job. Or the second one is dal or something of that sort, है ना? Nitrogen fixing. In fact, your friend spoke about nitrogen fixing bacteria. ये सारी जो चीजें एक साथ आएंगी भी 2-3 लेक्चर के बाद, when we do nitrogen cycle,
Yes, sir.
all these things will come in one place. Okay, is this clear? You wrote the point for legumes. Okay, then impact on. अच्छा, इसमें एक चीज याद रखो, देखो, if I'm talking of pH, what can disturb the pH?
The acidic rain.
Acid rain. So बहुत बार when we just enjoy कि भाई बारिश हो रही है, we never can realize it may be acidic rain. Okay, acidic rain is what? Having more of nitric acid and sulfuric acid. Okay, so here just अभी again ये सब चीजें हम pollution में और अच्छे से देखेंगे, but again pH can be impacted by pollutants from the industries and even the acid rain, for your reference. Okay, for and same you can also write just one more point here, the pH of water. So पहले हमने soil के pH की बात करी. Second point we will write impact on aquatic animals. Impact on aquatic animals. पहले हमने plants पे देखा impact. Now we are seeing impact on aquatic animals. Here you will write just one line. The pH of water affects fish. The pH of water affects fish. Affects fish and other aquatic organisms. Okay, so this is more or less self-explanatory. You can understand this part. Okay, this was the fifth point, or which point was this?
Fifth point.
Fifth, ठीक है. Sixth लिख लो. It is not mentioned here, but I'm talking of wind. Wind बहुत आसान है समझना. If the wind is blowing, what can happen? बताओ. Very good. Seed dispersal can help in pollination or not? ठीक है, तो बस wind लिखो इसमें. This is very easy to write down. एक और चीज है, for example, if there is a plant, if there is a very strong wind, can it get uprooted also?
Yes, sir.
That can also be a problem, है ना? Same, what will be the impact of wind on animals if you want to just think?
As
बहुत तेज अगर wind है,
affected to the
can it impact their migratory patterns? Think about birds. Okay, again, if there is a strong wind, a light wind, this will also depend on certain factors, right? So here wind पे लिखेंगे, wind for plants will write it impacts seed dispersal, pollination and water loss through transpiration. If there is no wind versus there is a heavy wind, there will be more water loss, right? Water loss through transpiration. We had already seen this term, right? Water loss through transpiration. Okay, example में लिखो, coastal trees. Have you seen the images of coconuts being slightly bent? ठीक है, casuarina plantations भी हैं जैसे, वो bent होती हैं, क्यों? Because of strong winds on coasts. So just write down that coastal trees may grow bent, B-E-N-T, bent or stunted. Coastal trees may grow bent or stunted due to strong coastal winds. Due to strong coastal winds. Okay, for animals we'll write. अब इसमें मैं डायरेक्ट एग्जांपल बता रहा हूं, because here also I'll say the same points. Migration is impacted by wind. We already know that. If migration is impacted, then the habitat will also be impacted by wind. Okay, so that is also something we already know. So here we'll write examples. ठीक है, पहला लिखेंगे birds like albatross. Birds like albatross. Albatross is again not found in India. It's again a bird from other part, let's say America. ठीक है? हाँ. Albatross. Birds like albatross. Okay. Birds like albatross use wind currents for efficient flight over oceans. Birds like albatross use wind currents. They use wind currents for efficient flight over oceans. अब अपने मार्जिन में जस्ट लिखो albatross and some current affair. In fact, I'll just show this to you. Over oceans. अरे मतलब if it has to move across long oceans, it uses the wind. Okay. So here, let's say this was again one of the things that was spoken. You will write down the rare flight of Antarctic's light mantled is just take example है current affairs का. So generally albatross India में दिख ही नहीं सकती हम. We cannot see them. Okay, but what happened? Let's say a certain albatross, it was found in Tamil Nadu. Just एक heading लिखना. Okay. It was a record sighting. Okay, so because of that, it was heavily covered back then. This is again a news almost 2 years old, but generally you can also see some contemporary affairs telling. अब इसके भी there were certain reasons that it could have lost its way. Why could have lost its way? Because of the changes in the atmosphere and even because of climate change. Antarctica, maybe there's a lot of melting going on. So these were 2 or 3 reasons why this was done. So it was again very rare example. ठीक है? But this also tells you that wind can also be a determinant. It is affecting the migratory patterns. This is the takeaway from this example. Okay. Second, इसी में insects like butterflies may avoid windy areas to conserve energy. Insects like butterflies, they may avoid windy areas. Of course, you can understand they would have to flap their wings many a times. Even doing so, they may get exhausted. So they will avoid that region, avoid windy areas to conserve energy during migration. ठीक है? Next point or the next dimension. This is point number 6, right?
Yes.
7th पे आओ. 7th is salinity. 7th is salinity. उसके बाद एक क्लास बचेगा humidity. Salinity is what? Salt content में variations. You can have too much of salt, too less of salt. ठीक है? याद करो, in the very first class I told you about mangroves. I just told you a term. With mangroves, what do you remember? ठीक है? Anything else that you remember from mangroves? Sundarbans, excellent. ठीक. Sundarbans have, yes, delta also. What did Sundarbans remind you of? Tigers also, and world's largest mangroves. But why am I discussing this in salinity? क्योंकि mangroves are known as halophytes. They can survive in extreme salty conditions. ठीक है? And for that they have a lot of adaptations in them. Okay? So we'll write for salinity. लिखो plants के level पे. Some plants called halophytes, H-A-L-O, phyte means to love, P-H-Y-T-E, H-A-L-O-P-H-Y-T-E-S, halophytes. Mangroves are also known as halophytes. Are adapted to grow, halophytes are adapted to grow in saline conditions. हेलोफाइट्स आर अडेप्टेड टू ग्रो इन सलाइन कंडीशंस, ठीक है। एग्जाम्पल मैंग्रोव्स। अब देखो, अब मैंग्रोव्स आपको थोड़ा बेटर लग रहा है सुनने में, 2-3 क्लास बाद और बेटर लगेगा, फिर और बेटर, ठीक है। सो मैंग्रोव्स, यू राइट मैंग्रोव्स इन कोस्टल एरियाज, mangroves in coastal areas can tolerate high salinity. Mangroves in coastal areas can tolerate high salinity by filtering out salt, from their roots, और बड़ा लिखना OR, or excreting it out through their leaves. मतलब अपनी रूट से निकाल सकते हैं और लीव से निकाल सकते हैं, बट आई हैड सेड और, इट मींस देयर आर मेनी वेराइटीज ऑफ मैंग्रोव्स. इफ यू गेट अ ब्लैंकेट स्टेटमेंट दैट ऑल द मैंग्रोव वेराइटीज excrete salt from the leaves, that is wrong. Some from their roots, ठीक है, और कुछ leaves, it means they will absorb from their roots, but their roots leaves have a mechanism, salt extrusion glands होंगे, वहां से वो निकाल देंगे एक्स्ट्रा. It means they will absorb via roots, but कुछ roots में आने नहीं देंगे, रूट से बाहर कर देंगे. That is why we are writing or. ठीक है. अच्छा, मैं फिर से एक बार बोल रहा हूं. We have said mangroves can tolerate high salinity by filtering out a salt at their roots or excreting it through their leaves. तो और भी बहुत ध्यान से पढ़ोगे आप कि there are different types of varieties of mangroves and there are different adaptations. That is why I've made you write this. ठीक है. अब talking of salinity in case of, let's say, animals. देखो, in animals there will be some fresh water species, there will be some brackish water species, है ना. For example, you will hear about घड़ियाल, you will hear about gangetic dolphin etc. that are generally found in fresh water. Gangetic dolphin etc. found in fresh water, but you also have a salt water crocodile. It is found in भिटरकनिका mangroves. मैंग्रोव से क्या याद आएगा भाई, यहां सॉल्ट ज्यादा होता है. तो अगर मैं सॉल्ट वाटर क्रोकोडाइल में ना बताऊं कि भिटरकनिका इज सॉल्ट वाटर, you can make that connection. Okay, so that simply means even the species have varied or adapted themselves with respect to salinity. ठीक है. तो यहां पे एक एग्जांपल जो मैंने बोला उसको लिख सकते हो. एग्जांपल, सॉल्ट वाटर क्रोकोडाइल्स इन भिटरकनिका मैंग्रोव्स. सॉल्ट वाटर क्रोकोडाइल्स इन भिटरकनिका मैंग्रोव्स. वेयर इज भिटरकनिका? आपको तो पता ही होगा. चलो ठीक है, उड़ीसा. हाँ हाँ, ठीक है. सॉल्ट वाटर क्रोकोडाइल्स फॉर एग्जांपल इन भिटरकनिका, यू कैन राइट. एक और एग्जांपल आई गिव यू. दिस इज अगेन एन इंटरेस्टिंग एग्जांपल. आई एम टेलिंग यू एन एग्जांपल ऑफ अ फिश. सैल्मन, SALMON. सैल्मन, पूरी लाइन लिखेंगे. सैल्मन can survive in both fresh water and salt water. अब ये मैं क्यों आपको लिखा रहा हूं? Because there are some species that can only survive in fresh water. For example, the dolphin I gave you example of, ठीक है, तो वो कुछ सिर्फ फ्रेश वाटर में है, कुछ सिर्फ सॉल्ट वाटर में. This is an example that can survive in both. Now, if it is surviving in both, it should have some mechanism in its own part. So there is a certain mechanism here. ठीक है. So here we will write salmon can survive in both fresh water and salt water because, ये important है, because they have specialized cells, because they have specialized cells to regulate salt concentrations, to regulate salt concentrations in their bodies. They have specialized cells to regulate salt concentrations in their bodies. Is this clear? ठीक है. अब आते हैं लास्ट पे. That is, this is point number 8, right? This is humidity. ये 8 होगा ना? हाँ, ठीक है. 8th is humidity. Plants पे first of all we'll write You also know that, for example, in hot and humid conditions, sometimes why does the cooler not help you? Why do you need an AC? Okay, so again it is for पहले humans पर अगर आप समझोगे, it is also going to determine our transpiration rates, right? Similarly, if you also know, you want to, let's say after washing a particular cloth, if you want to, let's say you put it out for drying, the amount of moisture that is there in the wind, that is the humidity part, that will also determine how fast will it dry. ठीक है, तो सेम इमेजिन हमें करना है फॉर प्लांट्स एंड सेम इमेजिन वी हैव टू डू फॉर animals. For plants, everything just will revolve around two things, either photosynthesis or evapotranspiration. Ultimately the life will depend on this. Okay, so here one line we'll write down. For humidity, plants में लिखेंगे डैश करके, H is humidity, it influences transpiration rates in plants. It influences transpiration rates in plants. Full stop. In low humidity environments, in low humidity environment, plant may lose water more quickly. Plant may lose water more quickly. Okay, and must have adaptations. And must have adaptations to conserve moisture. And must have adaptations to conserve moisture. ठीक है, example we can write. अब इसमें भी I'll give you two examples. One example from a tropical rainforest and another example from desert. Okay, so first point we'll write कि plants, for example, in tropical rainforest, plants in tropical rainforest thrive, THRIVE, thrive in high humidity. They thrive in high humidity, which allows for lush growth. They thrive in high humidity, which allows for lush growth. Okay, इसी के साथ नेक्स्ट, इन कॉन्ट्रास्ट, हाँ इसी में प्लांट्स के साथ देखो, एक हमने देखा इन द ट्रॉपिकल एरियाज, नाउ विल सी इन डेजर्ट्स. इन कॉन्ट्रास्ट, desert plants have waxy coatings. They have waxy coatings to minimize water loss. They have waxy coatings to minimize water loss in low humidity environment. In low humidity environment, they have waxy coatings. अब कुछ lines पहले what we had written, that they have a very thick fleshy stem. Second, now what we are seeing, they have waxy. आगे हम और क्या देखेंगे? If you look at a cactus, does it have leaves or does it have thorns? Thorns. ऐसा क्यों होगा सोचो?
Because they have to minimize the.
सही है. और चलो और कोई सोचो. You tell. और सोचो, पर आंसर जैसे इट इज वेरी डिपेंडेंट ऑन वाटर. अब देखो,
Minimize the transpiration.
सो दिस इज अ लीफ एंड दिस इज अ थॉर्न. इन कौन सा सिंपल एरिया? हियर मोर एरिया इज एक्सपोज्ड, सो मोर वाटर इज गोइंग टू बी वेस्टेड और लेट्स से लॉस्ट. वेरी स्मॉल एरिया, very minimal water is going to be lost. So this is again an adaptation. So from the very starting I am making a foundation for all of you कि अब जब जाके finally cactus देखोगे, आपको हर चीज पता होगी उसके बारे में कि भाई अब I know your history, geography, biology, everything I know from the very basic. Okay, that is why from the very first class, if you understand the abiotic factors, biotic तो of course दिखता है हमें. Abiotic अगर आपके दिमाग में चलने लगा, then behaviors, which species is found where, etc. So then you don't have to cram. Okay, because here also, for example, we've started with crepuscular क्या है, nocturnal क्या है, diurnal क्या है, and you now also know कि why are they doing this? Ultimately, either to stop getting killed, either to get a better prey, to avoid competition, etc. These are the ways, right? So here, what we were writing, I think cactus we wrote. ये अभी लिखना है.
Contrast desert plant have.
हाँ हाँ, you've written that point. पूरा हो गया. ठीक है. Next is we'll write about animals. Here H affects, H is humidity, it affects thermoregulation, it affects thermoregulation, thermo मतलब क्या होता है, टेम्परेचर, ठीक है, it affects thermoregulation and hydration, thermoregulation and hydration. In humid conditions, animals may struggle to cool down. Animals may struggle to cool down through sweating. This is something that you can also understand, right? Example आ जाओ. Now please write example में amphibians. Any example of amphibians that you can tell me? Frog, ठीक है? नहीं, crocodile is a reptile. आगे क्लियर हो जाएगा, अभी डोंट वरी, ठीक है? If you want to write an example of, एक तो लिख लो frog. इन सब की इमेजेस आपको देखनी है. फ्रॉग तो शायद आप सामने देखते होगे. एंड वन यू कैन राइट डाउन. But I want you to know, see the images. Abhi what we are writing about amphibians. Even in the discussion on species and climate change, I am going to emphasize on amphibians. And just for your reference, I'll tell you, amongst all the species that are available, the most threatened species because of climate change is
amphibians.
अगर अभी हम IUCN की वेबसाइट देखें अभी भी, तो proper it is mentioned that how these are most under the threat. Okay, so please write down amphibians like frogs require high humidity environment. Amphibians, AMPHIBIANS, amphibians like frogs, and you already know two more examples, toads and salamanders. They require high humidity environment to keep their skin moist. To keep their skin moist. To keep their skin moist for respiration. To keep their skin moist for respiration. एक और इंटरेस्टिंग चीज है, you have frogs. Frogs actually breathe through their skin. Okay, that is known as subcutaneous respiration. अब अपनी types of species में पहले अब जाओ पीछे आओ. Open sentinel species या indicator species. Have you written frogs there? चेक करो एक बार, चेक करो. नहीं नहीं नहीं, सेंटिनल, सेंटिनल में क्या क्या लिखा है? हाँ, इसमें फ्रॉग्स भी ऐड करो. नाउ ऐड फ्रॉग्स. दैट इज व्हाई देयर इज गोइंग टू बी टू एंड फ्रो फ्रॉग्स. एंड आई हैव टोल्ड यू फ्रॉग्स ब्रीथ थ्रू देयर स्किन. दैट इज नोन एज सबक्यूटेनियस रेस्पिरेशन. हाँ, फ्रॉग्स में देखो, यहां लिख सकते हो. Frogs breathe through the skin. This is known as subcutaneous respiration. Okay. अब देखो, when they breathe through the skin, if the air is having a lot of pollution, that will mean the death of ultimately. That is why they are the most threatened. तो अपने margins में when you write amphibian जहां लिखा है, वहां पे margins पे you can write frogs are the most threatened species. Okay. In fact, I can also just show this to you. Okay, for example, 2 in every 5 amphibians are threatened with extinction. Okay, और अगर नॉर्मली अगर रेड लिस्ट पे जाएं, राइट, सो हियर ऑल्सो, अब देखो ये थी ये चीज. दिस इज साइट ऑफ IUCN. इन द फ्यूचर क्लासेस वी विल टॉक अ लॉट अबाउट IUCN. ठीक, मोर देन लेट्स से अराउंड 50,000 स्पीशीज आर थ्रेटेंड विद एक्सटिंक्शन. ओके, इसमें सबसे ज्यादा थ्रेटेंड कौन दिख रहे हैं अपने को? ये corals भी है threatened, but when we talk about these animal species, so amphibians animals हो गए, conifer is a plant, तो इसको we can birds अलग हैं. So here the most dangerous or the most threatened ones when you talk about a certain section is going to be amphibians. ठीक है. Cycads अगर आपको ज्यादा दिख रहे हैं तो again these are plant. तो एनिमल और प्लांट में एनिमल्स पे अगर हम बात करेंगे तो वील टॉक अबाउट हाउ एम्फीबियंस आर वेरी मच थ्रेटेंड. ठीक है. बट दिस इज अगेन आपने जो बोला था, लेट्स से व्हाट इज दिस, लिजर्ड, राइट? एंड योर क्रोकोडाइल इज आल्सो बाय द वे अ रेप्टाइल ओनली, है ना? तो धीमे धीमे स्लोली एंड स्टेडली, कैन यू टेल मी जस्ट बाय लुकिंग एट इट व्हाट दिस इज? क्रैब. इट इज अ क्रस्टेशियन. ठीक है, नॉट कार्दाशियन. क्या है? क्रस्टेशियन. ठीक है. ओके, सो वी हैव written, ये भी हो गया humidity,
Yes, sir.
all the points, plants and animals. अब you have to do when we have the next class, at least इसको बहुत अच्छे से organically पढ़ना है, and even the previous things that we have done. Okay, so now one by one we'll start. कौन कौन से हमने points देखे थे? नहीं, पहले tell me what is biotic? Living. Three components in biotic. जल्दी जल्दी. Producers. Start with producers. They are autotrophs. So generally we are talking of plants who make their own food. Then you have consumers. Then you have decomposers. Who can be decomposers? And bacteria. Can virus be a decomposer? No. And what can be parasites?
Bacteria.
Virus. All the three can be. Okay? These are the biotic factors. Then what are the biotic factors? When you're talking of animals and plants, there are certain interactions between them. We already know that. Okay? Species interactions we know. 6 kind of interactions: mutualism, competition, predation, parasitism, amensalism, commensalism. ठीक है, सबके examples हमने आज देखे. Second thing that we have done is abiotic factors and their impacts on plants also and animals also. So very first thing what you had written in notes क्या था? Light. अब light को बताओ, light plants को कैसे affect करती है? Photosynthesis, growth and flowering. We had seen the example of sunflower. ठीक. And शेड लविंग क्या था?
वो the flower.
फर्न. अगेन शेड लविंग में एक स्टार मार्क लगाओ और राइट डाउन 2-3 वेरी प्रोमिनेंट एग्जांपल्स. द मोर यू डू दिस विल देन नॉट बिकम अ बर्डन फॉर यू, बिकॉज अल्टीमेटली व्हेन यू राइट द एग्जाम, है ना, ये छोटे छोटे एफर्ट्स आपने खुद से देखा, अच्छा यार ये भी तो बड़ी इंटरेस्टिंग चीज है. इवन आई आस्क्ड यू टू सी द मैकेनिज्म हाउ सनफ्लावर इज ट्रैकिंग और चेंजिंग इट्स डायरेक्शन एज पर द मूवमेंट ऑफ सन. यू कैन इवन ऐड, मैंने आपको एग्जांपल दिया फर्न्स का, बट आई वुड वांट you to see more. Sun living और दोनों, shade और sun दोनों living, you can see examples. Second, what was the impact of light on plant animals? Migration, yes, reproduction, and then daily activities. And then we've seen 3 terms. Crepuscular is what? Twilight. Then you have nocturnal, you have diurnal. तीनों के example बताओ जल्दी जल्दी. Nocturnal, owl. Then diurnal. अब देखो बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग है ये. अब नहीं जस्ट अब देखो ये जो आया पॉइंट. अब देन यू हैव टू थिंक व्हेन डज अ पर्टिकुलर टाइगर हंट. क्या वो सुबह हंट करता है, रात में हंट करता है? Which also means I've only given you one example. अब आराम से when you have time, just see 1 or 2 examples. For example, अब आप जैसे your homework should be when does a lion or a tiger hunt? Is it throughout the day or is it only at certain time of the day? थोड़ा सा just for your interest, right? Crepuscular, what was the example? Deer. Okay, and then a lot of lists we had seen. Right, ठीक है. And many birds are there, but हाँ ठीक है, that is one. That is the very first part. Second one was water. And we had said water and nutrient availability. Okay, so if the nutrient availability is very less, then what will happen?
The plants will not get enough nourishment.
And then what are the plants you will find in very low nutrient soils?
Such as cactus.
सोचो. Yes, the carnivorous or insectivorous plants, because they already have less nutrition, so they have gone for more. Yes, right. Example बताओ. Venus flytrap. But again, I have also told you इसमें सब में और examples add करो. I have given you prominent examples, but 1 or 2 examples you can add. ठीक है? Okay. Then how does it impact the animals? Nutrient wala point. Soil and nutrient.
And they are not getting enough.
Yes. Indirect on herbivore and ultimately on the predators. So we had seen the example of African savanna. Okay, it already has dense shrubs and dense grasses. It means a lot of zebras and herbivores. It means good amount of lion. Okay, that was this third abiotic factor. नहीं देखो देख के बताओ, ऐसे नहीं, you are allowed to see.
Temperature.
नहीं pH बाद में आएगा, अपने सीक्वेंस, इन द सीक्वेंस. हाँ ठीक है. ठीक, सॉइल हो गया हाँ.
Soil होगा. Temperature.
और सॉइल में pH है, then we are sorry. Okay, तो soils में we know what kind of soil what kind of pH the plants want.
From 7 to थोड़ा सा.
हाँ. So yes, neutral to slightly acidic. Okay, that was one. एक और पॉइंट लिखा था इसमें हमने.
Aquatic.
No, pine prefers which kind of soil?
Acidic.
Yes, and then इसके साथ एक और एग्जांपल था. पाइन के साथ I told you leguminous. Leguminous का एग्जांपल pulses also, and also gram. Chole is actually not gram, it should be chickpea. Chickpea is chole. So chickpea also you can write pulses also, gram also. These are examples of legumes. ठीक है. Okay. हाँ sorry. अच्छा wind नहीं, मैं I'm thinking about animal में क्या देखा था हमने? हाँ, very good. Acid rain, fishes getting impacted because of this. Yes. Then next was wind. Okay, so movement of wind, again pollination, dispersal. इसमें हमने देखा example of yes migration also, albatross, and also rarely found अभी देखी गई in the recent years, Tamil Nadu. Then coastal trees getting bent. Okay, then how does it impact the animals? Very good. ठीक है. Next कौन सा point था? Salinity. Yes, very interesting for plants. Halophytes is a good keyword. What are halophytes? Prominent example, mangroves. Now mangroves have different adaptations. उनमें से जो adaptation for salt है, it can be either through roots, but it can also be on their leaves. Okay, that is also a good part. Then in terms of animals, what did we see in terms of salinity?
Crocodiles.
Good. Crocodiles का example है. ठीक है, ये भी examples है. और कोई चीज मैंने बोली? Frog अभी इसके बाद आएगा. Frogs आएगा in humidity. Salmon, it can do or live in both. If you want to add here, आप ये लिख सकते हो, for example, Gangetic dolphin being a freshwater species, so that you know the difference. Fresh water भी है, saline water भी है. You can write the example, Gangetic dolphin being a freshwater species. Gangetic dolphin. इसके बारे में भी हम और देखेंगे. डॉल्फिन सुना है ना? तो दिस इज फाउंड इन रिवर गंगा. गैंजेटिक डॉल्फिन है. हाँ. No, the reference is I'm saying freshwater species are also there, some salt water are also there. Salmon was found in both. For example, saltwater crocodile is found in salt water, and this is in freshwater. This is again to give you reference. आगे भी हम और भी देखेंगे based on salinity क्या होता है. जैसे for example, if you have salinity from 5 ppt to 35 ppt कहाँ मिलेगा, आगे देखेंगे अभी. ठीक है, don't worry about that. Apart from humidity, last point क्या था? यही last था. नहीं, humidity was last. In humidity, what we had done?
That's how it affects the transpiration of plants.
Okay.
In humid as well as in dry area.
Right. तो इसमें मुझे example बताओ.
For example, in dry areas, cactus, which has a waxy layer.
Right.
And mangrove in the humid area.
Right. ठीक है. वो भी अच्छा example है. Okay, that is also good example. ठीक है. Now you can write a heading. अच्छा, सॉइल जहां पे लिखा है एक साइड में एक बस ये हेडिंग लिखो जरा सी, जहां पे सॉइल लिखा है आपने. बफरिंग कैपेसिटी ऑफ अर्थ. सॉइल के पास जगह नहीं तो कहीं और भी लिख लो. बफरिंग कैपेसिटी ऑफ अर्थ इज एक्चुअली रिलेटेड टू सॉइल एंड पीएच बोथ. ठीक है. बफरिंग कैपेसिटी ऑफ अर्थ, इट सिंपली मींस, ये जो है ना अपने को व्हाट यू हैव टू राइट, that for example if there are changes in the pH of the soil, okay, if it is being made acidic etc, can earth neutralize it or not? So if you get this definition that what is buffering capacity, buffering hoti kya hai, that there is again a layer, it's like a cushion. If there is any external change that is done, we'll try to resist it and we'll make it normal, है ना. तो buffering capacity of earth is only this. Sorry क्या हुआ? बस नहीं, इसी के अंडर ही एक हेडिंग है, मतलब of course. हाँ, soil and pH combined, there is again a part. Now this also helps you that earth has a limited buffering capacity. If you keep on changing it, एक लेवल के बाद वो चेंज नहीं कर पाएगा back to normal. That is the whole idea behind buffering capacity of Earth. It is not the buffering of YouTube. Buffer kar raha hai abhi video. That is different. This is different. Buffer here is, for example, let's say this is Earth. It can withstand certain changes. Buffering is just an extra layer overall, which will help. तो अगर बफरिंग से आपको ये आइडिया लगेगा कि ओनली देयर इज अ लिमिटेड लेवल ऑफ डैमेज द अर्थ कैन रिप्लेनिश बैक, अदरवाइज ऑफ कोर्स द थिंग्स विल गेट हार्म्ड. ओके, इसको इफ यू वांट टू राइट एक लिख सकते हो. एंड आल्सो द पीपल हु आर ऑनलाइन ऑन द यूट्यूब, वी हैव शेयर्ड द लेक्चर 3 MCQs, हैंड रिटन नोट्स, उनकी गूगल ड्राइव की लिंक है यहाँ पे. ठीक है, तो उसको भी यू कैन सी दैट. किसको? हाँ, तो दैट इज देयर यूट्यूब पे. द पीपल हु आर वाचिंग, यू कैन जस्ट हैव अ लुक एट. ओके, इसमें जस्ट वही एक लाइन लिखो. बफरिंग कैपेसिटी ऑफ अर्थ में यू विल जस्ट राइट डाउन वन लाइन. इट रिफर्स टू अर्थ्स अबिलिटी टू अब्सॉर्ब, Earth's ability to absorb, neutralize or mitigate.
Earth's ability to neutralize.
Absorb, neutralize or mitigate. 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 Mitigate changes in environmental conditions. Changes in environmental conditions, such as increase in carbon dioxide, increase in carbon dioxide, changes in pH, temperature fluctuations, full stop. नहीं, अदर क्या था लास्ट में?
Temperature fluctuations.
which helps maintain stable conditions for life. Which helps maintain stable conditions for life. ठीक है? Now put the next up. पेज छोड़ना चाहो. Now we move to the next topic. इसमें I'll just introduce this topic because after that we'll do this in the next class. Heading लिख लो बस. The heading is adaptations. Adaptations in plants and animals. Adaptations. Adaptations in plants and animals. Adaptations की बात कर रहे हैं, right? Now adaptations can be divided or can be understood in some ways. Okay, तो जो I think the only one that we have done so far, जैसे cactus की अगर बात कर रहे हैं उसको ही भी लिखेंगे. बाकी जो सारी adaptations है, this is again a very interesting topic. This we'll see then in the next class. Okay, so for adaptations, and by the way, the questions on adaptations and species behavior at least in the 5 years have increased. Earlier this was a topic, generally इस पे सवाल आते ही नहीं थे. Okay, so that is why I am emphasizing a lot on abiotic factors. अब क्योंकि आप abiotic factors आपने पढ़ लिए हैं, this section is going to be very easy. Okay, I am treating this as a separate section, but जो पहले points लिखे हैं will also get repeated because again it's an adaptation. Abiotic factors की वजह से भी adaptations होते हैं. Okay, so that we have written in that section, but exclusively ये section है adaptations का. Okay, that will help you, and this will also help you then later on also understand species behavior in more detail. Okay, तो यहाँ पे कुछ बस basic, I'll just do an introduction of around 5 minutes or so, right? जिससे so that you have just an example for this to know. Okay, हाँ, अब इसमें लिखते हैं, पहला पॉइंट आप लिख सकते हो. Okay, adaptations are special features. We are just defining what adaptations are. These are the special features. Adaptations are special features or behaviors that help the plants and animals. Ashutosh, PAR, I'll tell you, PAR actually means photosynthetically active radiation. इसका सिंपल ये मतलब होता है जितनी भी रेडिएशन आ रही है, not all of them can be used in photosynthesis. Only a very small part of that is useful for photosynthesis. ठीक है, तो this I will tell you. This is again a very short note. आगे देखेंगे इसको भी. Okay, and here also somebody please write down PAR, I'll also, if you have to remind me in a particular section, we'll write this. Again, बहुत छोटा सा note है where I have to talk about UV spectral quality and PAR. Okay. हमने कहां तक लिखा? That helps the plant survive and animals survive, grow and reproduce. Survive, grow and reproduce in specific environments. Survive, grow and reproduce in specific environments. ठीक है. अब इसमें I'll just introduce two words to you and after that of course ये पूरे जो section है we'll see that. One second. अच्छा ठीक है, ये यहीं पे है. Can I remove this annotation? Okay. अच्छा चलो ठीक है, अभी रहने दो. देखो, there are two terms we'll see, two roots. One term is stenothermal, one is eurythermal. And by the same logic, there can be a term stenohaline and euryhaline. Okay. So, because we're talking of adaptations, right? So, first of all, you need to know there are certain organisms that can withstand a big range of temperature. मान लीजिए 2-3 डिग्री भी चेंज आपने कर दिया, they will be able to withstand it. Okay, this is just an example, but there will be some organisms that can not even withstand 0.2, 0.3 degrees Celsius change. Okay, in the same manner, there are some organisms that cannot withstand any change in salinity. बहुत minor सा भी change करा हमने, so either they will move away, they may have a defense response, okay, or they will be under a lot of stress. Whereas there are certain organisms that can stay the long course, which means if there are changes in temperature or long changes in salinity, they are able to survive that. ठीक. अब अगर कोई भी change आपकी capacity के beyond हो रहा है, there are two options available. Either you adapt to it or what? या तो adapt करो या भागो means migrate. तीसरा क्या ऑप्शन है? वो हमेशा रहता है साथ में स्पीशीज के साथ. So they may get extinct. Okay, there is too much of stress, they will die. And in, और ये जो हम पॉइंट्स बात करने वाले adaptations, that is they are true for millions of years. The Earth's temperature, right from the time when we did not have any oxygen to the time there is a lot of carbon dioxide, slowly oxygenation started to happen, right? तो उसके बाद बहुत glaciation cycles हुए बहुत ढेर सारे. So these things have stood the test of time. So we have known species who are stenothermal, eurythermal, euryhaline, stenohaline. तो अभी सिर्फ ये लिखेंगे and from the next class we will see adaptations in detail. Okay. So we are just writing a term stenothermal. अब देखो stenothermal को लिंक करो टेम्परेचर से. One of the abiotic factor was temperature. अब टेम्परेचर के चेंज में you have two types of species. One is stenothermal, one is eurythermal. So stenothermal is they can withstand a very small variation in temperature. Eurythermal, हाँ बोलो. अभी हम adaptation बस इंट्रोड्यूस कर रहे हैं. उसमें I'm telling you there are organisms which can survive a big range versus a very small range. And उसके बाद से भी adaptation शुरू होंगे उसके बाद से, because I cannot start the next section now. अभी देखो these are terms that we see in adaptations also. ठीक है. There are different types of adaptation. I'm just introducing the concept to you. ठीक है. अभी हम बस दो टर्म्स लिख रहे हैं, स्टेनोथर्मल एंड यूरीथर्मल. जैसे मैंने आपको क्या बोला अभी, जस्ट व्हाट वी अंडरस्टूड, अगर टेम्परेचर चेंज हो रहा है, ठीक, तो स्पीशीज के पास क्या ऑप्शंस हैं? नंबर 1, दे कैन आइदर अडैप्ट, दे कैन मूव अवे और दे विल अल्टीमेटली डाई. ठीक है. तो अभी पहले तो रेंज समझेंगे ना, किस रेंज में. फॉर सम दे कैन बी वेरी स्मॉल रेंज, फॉर सम दे कैन बी बिग रेंज. Okay, and when they are subjected to stress, the body will either produce certain chemicals as a defense mechanism. Body में कुछ changes होंगे. अब देखो ये चीज हम वैसे देख चुके हैं. Body में change जैसे instead of leaves, somebody can have thorns, somebody can have a thick layer of fat, some organisms can huddle together. तो ये सारे behaviors हैं, कुछ certain adaptations हैं, right? तो वो easily will also understand, but just for that you can just start and write this. ठीक है. तो organisms which withstand a small variation in temperature, these are stenothermal, and eurythermal is which can withstand large variation in temperatures. बस इतना लिखो and then we'll continue that in the next class. अच्छा चलो, आशुतोष जो आपने क्वेश्चन पूछा, दिस क्वेश्चन कैन आल्सो बी देयर। देखो जब भी अगर ऐसा सवाल आए, you have to be very cautious. For example, your friend is asking, are bears crepuscular? ठीक है, अब bears बहुत तरह के होते हैं. There are, for example, grizzly bears. There are bears in black bear है हमारे यहाँ से Himalayan, वो जो in Himachal Pradesh etc. You will get the black bear also. Okay, then so whenever we say bear तो बहुत बड़ा example है. तो there will be some which can be crepuscular. कुछ diurnal भी होंगे depending on the food availability etc. So here you don't have to write a blanket statement. Again जब मैंने deer बोला तो मैंने उसमें बोला many deers are crepuscular. I did not say every deer is. क्योंकि कोई ना कोई ऐसा deer होगा वो statement गलत करने के लिए बैठा होगा कि नहीं अब आप देखो मैं रात में I can be active during a different time. This also happens. Okay, so here also for these details etc. you cannot also remember them, and this is also where sometimes if the question is so this can also go in your benefit. If they say all the varieties of beers are crepuscular, that statement will also be wrong, because in environment you will see a lot of exceptions. Okay, other than that, when we do the topic of beers, so then also remind me, we'll take this in more detail also. Is this part clear? Okay, so now I think you would be aware the lecture 4 is on Friday.
Yes.
ठीक है, so now we meet on Friday. Lecture 4 is also going to be live streamed on YouTube. So those who want to avail that would be the last lecture on YouTube, right? So with that, I'll take your leave. We'll meet now in the next class. Okay, thank you.
Sir, I was asking
Huh.
something regarding